Call the meeting to order.
Do we have enough people on the phone? Do we have anybody on the phone? Assembly members? Okay, good.
Yeah, I'm on the phone from here.
Okay, that's all right. Thank you. All right. I'll call this meeting to order at 6 p.m. This is a regular meeting for Tuesday, March 21st, 2023. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
I will. Tim Hale.
Here.
Stephanie Nowers. Here. I am expecting Dee McKee, Robert Yunt,
Here.
Moki 2,
Here.
Dimitri Fonoff,
Over here.
Ron Bernier. Are you on the phone?
Here.
You do have a quorum, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I would like to add something to the agenda. On Saturday morning, Benny Cottle passed away, and so I'd like a moment of silence. He had dedicated 60 years of his life as a person involved with our fire department, starting not only from him doing and working it personally, but also donation of land, etc. So if you'll join me in a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Thank you. Is there anything that any members would like to pull from the consent agenda?
So,
ahead.
Madam Mayor, if I may- go ahead.
All righty, go ahead, sir. Online?
Yeah, I'd like to pull 23-036, please.
If I could clarify, Assembly Member Hale, you're talking about a resolution, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Resolution 23036.
Is there any other items?
Yes.
Okay, yes, sir.
AM 23-018.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Anything else, any of the members? Okay, Mike, go ahead.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to request that AM 23022, which is the Matsu Central School 95% design approval, be continued until the next regular meeting, which is April 4th. MCG will still do the design presentation tonight under manager's comments, but due to spring break, the school board has not taken action to approve the 95% design. So we just want to ensure that assembly approval or discussion happens after the school board's taken action tomorrow night. So we'll still do the presentation here shortly, but the AM itself would not come up until the next meeting, regular meeting agenda.
I just want to clarify that it's completely coming off the agenda, not for the assembly to continue.
Okay, fair enough. Your call.
Any other items before we move on? Okay, hearing those, then the agenda is approved as presented. If you'll all stand, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next item on our agenda is the minutes of the preceding meetings from our regular assembly meeting on the 21st of February of 2023 and our regular assembly meeting of March 7th, 2023. Are there any changes to those minutes being presented? Okay, hearing none, the minutes are approved as presented. We do have some special orders of the day. We have a proclamation. Rabbi? Whereas a quality education is one of the most significant foundations for the continuing success of our society. And in the Mat-Su Borough, we strive for increased focus on education. And whereas through providing the possibility of an excellent education for all, we can create hope for a brighter, kinder, more unified, and prosperous future in the lives of many. Whereas one of the leading advocates for the advancement of education, the Rabbi, go ahead. Yeah.
Nachum Schneerson, yes.
Thank you. Stress the importance of moral and ethical education as a bedrock of humanity and a hallmark of a healthy society. And whereas in recognition of his outstanding contribution towards the improvement in education, he was awarded the Congressional Gold Medal. And Congress established a national day in honor of his to raise awareness and strengthen the education of our students. And whereas Education and Sharing Day is observed each day on April 2nd, his birthday, it is a day to pause and reflect on our responsibilities to ensure our youth have the foundation necessary to lead rich lives in purpose and fulfillment through service and good works. And whereas officials, education, volunteers, and citizens, we can nurture unity by encouraging acts of goodness and kindness with the awareness that even one individual positive action can make a major impact in our world. Now therefore be resolved that I, Edna DeVries, Mayor of the Matanuska-Susitna Borough, do recognize Tuesday, April 2nd, 2023 as Education and Sharing Day. So and here's your, these are the 3 copies there, sir.
All right, thank you very much.
Mhm.
You take a picture?
Yeah.
Who's taking anyone?
Nope,
Clerk?
nobody's got pictures.
No one? Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, next time.
Oh,
Thank you.
no, Stephanie or
we go.
Jennifer's there.
Here, turn around the camera.
You want to look at the camera?
All
Huh?
shy today, huh?
What do we need to get away from the?
Like, I have the podium, I can't bring
Aw. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. All right. One second. All right. Thank you very much, Mayor Edna, and to the entire Mat-Su Borough Assembly for proclaiming April 2nd as Education and Sharing Day. This year, April 2nd, corresponds to the 11th day of the Hebrew month of Nisan, the 121st birthday of the greatest Jewish leader in our time, the Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem M. Schneerson. Education and Sharing Day emphasizes the importance of paying attention, not only to academic education and preparation for a career, but also education of morality and ethics, to raise children to adults who have the proper foundations and can utilize academic knowledge and their career to make the right choices and help make the world a better place. The Rebbe stresses the importance of every person, especially children, having their own charity box. Every time they earn pocket money or allowance, parents teach their children to give small portion of it to charity. For just as charity does a great deal for the person in need physically, charity does a great deal for the giver, mentally, psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually. Giving charity every day is like daily exercise. The more we move our kindness muscles, the more we reveal the inherent selfless goodness that we have inside us. The earlier we educate our children with this behavior, the more this will become a part of who they are, to live a life day by day with virtues of goodness and kindness. Therefore, with the partnership and cooperation of the Mat-Su Borough Manager, Mike Brown, we have gifted these mementos, ARCs, charity boxes, for all the Mat-Su Borough employees to encourage the importance, to encourage incorporating this in our daily schedule to give at least one coin to charity. The Rebbe also stresses very strongly the importance of the place of parents in the education of their children, not only to worry for their physical health and safety, but also for their spiritual, emotional, and psychological well-being. Parents, we are encouraged to have meaningful conversations with our children to impart to them a moral compass and values that are strong and enduring, no matter what financial or social status they will attain in life. Values like kindness, like doing the right thing and not to back down because of social pressures, to make good choices and to stand strong even if it seems hard at times, because there's an eye that sees and ear that hears, the creator of the universe, who watches over each one of us and gives us the strength and courage and hopes that we will make the right decisions. Not so long ago, here in our public school system, they began to start the day with a quiet moment. This is a perfect opportunity to encourage parents to have these meaningful conversations with their children about the above and other important values, and to give their children food for thought, so that when they come to school, in addition to having physical food for their lunches and snacks, they also have spiritual, emotional, and meaningful food for their minds and hearts. By divine providence, this has been implemented in the 120th year of the Rebbe, something that he is so passionate about, that us parents not forget our important and crucial role in our children's education. This year, as mentioned many times, is a special year in the Jewish calendar. In biblical times, once every 7 years, all the Jewish people would gather together in Jerusalem, men, women, and children, to hear the reading of the 5 books of Moses by the king of the time, and to be inspired and stay focused on their God-given purpose and mission here in this world. Parents inspire their children to be focused and grounded on the values that really make us who we are as people, a nation, as humanity as a whole. Judaism teaches that every good deed of every individual has the power to change the world for better. And every one of us adds and increases in goodness and kindness, the world will become a perfect and good place, a home for the divine, to the coming of Mashiach speedily in our time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. And I saw outside you have the box of these arcs. So everyone could take some.
Okay. The next item on our agenda is The next item on our agenda is reports and correspondence. We have agency reports. Do we have anyone here from either one of the 3 cities? Okay, I don't see anybody. Do we have a report from the school district? Don't see anybody. And we have a report from the state of Alaska. Todd, do you want to come up, and then we'll recognize the Rasmussen Foundation. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the Assembly and staff and constituents. Todd Smolden with the Governor's Office in the Mat-Su. I'll try to keep it short tonight. Looks like you're going to have a long meeting again. So, but we did have some information out today on the spring revenue forecast, which I think is a little bit disappointing in terms of oil prices. But I think it also highlights a couple of really important things about Alaska and some things the governor's working on. One, we really need to continue to work on diversifying our economy in Alaska. When state revenues are tied directly to oil prices and returns in the market, both of those things are very volatile, and that also means our state revenue is very volatile. And so things that the legislature and the governor can work on that are pro-business, that reduce regulations, some of the things that the governor has proposed, like his carbon initiative, and other things to increase revenue. Hopefully the legislature will take a real serious look at and passing, and they'll pass those things. The other issue is that it's just, again, a reminder that we're a development state. We're a resource development state, and we need to make sure that we're doing that. And sometimes as an educator, I was often surprised at how little people knew about where our revenue came from and the importance of resource development in our state. And when people now in my job ask about more funding for this or more funding for that, and you ask them, well, where does the funding come from? It's kind of shocking to realize that so many people don't understand that the bulk of our revenue comes from resource development. And so hopefully this will spur a conversation within the legislature on a couple of things. What can we do to increase responsible resource development And can we create a long-term fiscal plan for the future? These are short-term challenges when we have reduced revenue, but hopefully they will incentivize this conversation that needs to take place, a long-term conversation on a stable fiscal future for Alaska. I don't know if you have any other questions. I know I spoke with Assemblymember Nowers earlier in the week, or maybe it was late last week, about DOT projects. Are you going to ask me about that through the mayor to Assemblymember Nowers?
Go ahead,
If
Assembly
you'd like me
Personnel.
to, yes.
Well, the answer will be, I am supposed to have a phone call tomorrow with more information. So,
For reference, this was about the Glen Highway expansion, the second phase, and the bad ruts, if you've driven that area. And I did hear one update, and we could talk offline, that they are going to try to get those filled this winter, since they're not going to be taking that to 4 lanes and fixing it. So, but I really appreciate always having Todd here and having him as a resource to get these things solved.
We'll see if he gets the same answer, okay?
well, I will, if I find out more information through the mayor, I will pass that on to the clerk, and maybe she can share with everybody. But Assemblymember Nowers did hear that there might be some delays on a couple of projects in the Mat-Su, so I'm checking on that.
Good, thank you. Any other questions?
Mayor, this is Ron Bernier.
Oh, go ahead, sir.
Is there any more information on the fentanyl and stuff like that, what the governor's plan is doing?
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Assemblymember Bernier. Through the mayor, there are a couple of pieces that the governor has put in place already. One is to increase trooper presence at the airports. As you know, a lot of fentanyl is coming in through the southern border, and while we do not have any control over that, that's a federal issue, but we can try to tighten up our borders, and so we're doing that through trooper and other drug detection presence in the airports. The governor has introduced legislation to make fentanyl peddling through street drugs, stiffer penalties for that. The legislation hasn't moved much in the Senate, and so we're hoping that will move a little faster in the Senate. Those are kind of the two main things. And then through the Department of Health, they are also working on they're working on some education resources for local school districts. There is a piece of legislation that was filed by Representative Rauscher. I can't remember the title of it, but you might talk to his office about that. It's related to fentanyl education and opioid education in the classroom.
Okay. Follow up, Assemblyperson Bernier.
Yeah, I strongly believe stiffer penalties on meth, heroin, fentanyl, all that should be really, it's going to really slow that use down, I believe. And I appreciate you. Thank you, Todd.
Yeah, just one more thing on that. Through the mayor, the penalty that the governor has proposed for anybody who deals drugs that results in the death of someone from fentanyl is a designation of second-degree murder. So that is definitely a stiffer penalty than we currently have in statute.
Okay. Deputy Mayor, did you have a question, sir?
When you say it hasn't had much traction in the Senate, is that due to political environment, or is that due to them just still being focused on the budget?
Through the mayor to Assemblymember Yunt, I will not speculate on the motives of legislators. That could get me fired.
Well, I'll say this. Our governor has the strongest veto in the country. So if it doesn't move, I hope he uses his whipping stick when the session ends. Because it sounds like pretty common sense legislation to me. So thank you.
Further questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Have a good night.
The next item under State of Alaska is we have a presentation from the Rasmussen Foundation about advancing broadband statewide.
Thank you, Madam
Good evening.
Mayor and members of the Assembly in person and online. 2 points of just protocol. Can people online also see the presentation? No? Okay, so I'll be more specific about reading some of the content from the slides then. I'm Christina Woolston. I'm a senior fellow with Rasmussen Foundation. My day job is I'm the head of external affairs for Donlin Gold, so I've had the pleasure of presenting to your body a number of times on a local project as well. So it's very nice to see all of you again. Thank you. My colleague and I, Rachel, have the pleasure of talking with you and the Mat-Su Borough about a really important effort in Alaska to bring digital equity to each of our communities and to every Alaskan. So we'll map out what that means, who the players are, and why this is such an important effort in Alaska. So the broadband and digital equity effort really starts, and you can, nope, actually it's me, my apologies. I can advance the slide. This way? Yeah, it did. Yes, always, everywhere. Is it being driven off of that laptop? Well, I'm going to speak while, so not waste anybody's time here. So the digital equity effort in Alaska is mapped much the same throughout every state in the United States. We know that there are percentages of our communities that are not served and participating fully as they could or should in fully using the internet, being part of our global economy. Thank you very much. So the last, there we go. So the major players in this effort, the State Broadband Office, that was stood up by the legislature last year. It is funded through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and the Digital Equity Inclusion Act. And the State Broadband Office is staffed with Thomas Lochner, Lisa Mudbargan, and Melissa Kukesh. And they're responsible for two aspects of this very important effort. The BEAD side, which there are lots of potential funds coming from for the infrastructure side of things, not to be confused with a lot of the other infrastructure funds that are coming around broadband and fiber, et cetera. And then also the digital equity side. So that's really Alaskans using and fully participating in the internet. And that's where the Rasmussen Foundation comes in. So last year, the board approved a $3 million fund for bringing broadband to all Alaskans because it stands for a better life for all of us, and they're invested in that as a nonprofit. So in partnering with the state, the Rasmussen Foundation and other partners are endeavoring to hear from everyday Alaskans that around these goals for broadband in Alaska. And this is a broad goal for the state of Alaska, and it meets with the Rasmussen's goals because all of the communities they seek to serve are limited in many cases: education, healthcare, social services. These are all things that the Rasmussen Foundation invests in, and those are limited without true broadband in a community and access. So as you can see on the slide, access to high-speed, reliable broadband at affordable prices through an equitable and transparent process that engages communities, results in a strong governance structure, and ensures programmatic goals and benefits that are realized. That's our ultimate goal, and we'll talk more about the timing. Digital equity. This is the situation where all Alaskans have reliable, affordable, and accessible internet and broadband. That means a lot of things to different people. The Digital Equity Act provides skills and training around this, online accessibility, and it also empowers our rural communities. And as we know, even within the Mat-Su Borough, there are areas, while it may be more urban than some of our rural communities, we know that accessibility, affordability, and reliability is not everywhere. So the Digital Equity Act is really important for establishing where we are as a baseline for a state so that we can receive funding to help to resolve some of those issues going forward. The planning that we're in the process of doing right now will lead to the implementation. So we call it the plan for the plan. So we have about a year to engage with Alaskans to get their feedback in order to write a plan that will resolve our digital inequity in our communities. There's a lot of money out there. This is the potential funds for the BEAD side. We know we can't achieve digital equity without a lot of the infrastructure that it relies on to make it possible for Alaskans. So that's the amount that would potentially come to Alaska in funds for broadband. This is an important piece of our engagement. So there are 8 covered populations, basically the groups of Alaskans that experience the highest rates of digital inequity: low income, individuals 60 or older, incarcerated individuals, veterans, individuals with disabilities, individuals with a language barrier, members of a racial or ethnic minority group, and rural Alaskans. So for the most part, these are the populations that we seek to engage with at the highest level to understand why they're not experiencing the same levels of digital equity. Finally, the plan that we are writing and embarking upon right now is the state's vision for digital equity for all Alaskans. A digital equity framework and a scorecard so that we can understand how well we're doing and match against that. Plans for digital literacy innovation programs. We need to make sure that it's safe, that people understand how to use the internet properly if they're not currently able to do that safely. Technology-related apprenticeships, workforce opportunities. We know this is a huge component of utilizing true broadband in Alaska for employment opportunities and training. Integration with the state's upcoming economic development strategy around education and health outcomes and civic and social engagement. And then finally, the action steps to implement the digital equity plan. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Rachel, who is going to bring us home for the last part of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. I'll adjust the mic. We have a bit of a height difference. For the record, Mayor and Assembly members, my name is Rachel Callander, and I'm pleased to be here with you. I am a contractor for the Rasmussen Foundation and a consultant based in Anchorage. So moving on, Christina mentioned the plan within the plan. As you are well aware, at the borough, there are many funds coming from the infrastructure funding coming from the federal government. So as it pertains to digital equity and broadband access holistically for the state, we have the state digital equity plan, which is what we're presenting here on behalf of the Rasmussen initiative that we're a part of on the equity piece. That is in addition to a massive statewide effort that will produce tribal digital equity plans, plural. And then there is the state broadband planning. The first slide mentioned the broadband office that the state of Alaska stood up last year. And all of that culminates and results in the state 5-year broadband action plan. And that is really what, that's sort of the champion here, the benchmark for getting Alaska and Alaskans to where we need to be. So the planning process really has 3 main components that we're here to present to all of our hub communities that we're reaching out to truly listen and understand, receive outreach, feedback to our outreach. Data collection and analysis is concurrently happening with other planning efforts. A lot of consideration, of course, and then reflection to feed back into that larger 5-year plan. So how are we doing this? Statewide communications include opportunities for listening sessions pointed directly at those 8 covered population groups that we're focused on, but also beyond those groups as well. Public presentations like what we are doing here tonight with you all, public comment processes, which will really get activated this summer, and we hope that we can engage with you again on that as well. Of course, your standard communication statewide, including social media, email, PSAs, ads, and then important partnerships with nonprofits and community leaders around the state. As I mentioned, these listening sessions include public meetings statewide. They sort of were stood up in October of last year and will run through this summer, buttressing that public comment process. And then, of course, attendance at regularly scheduled events, which we would love your feedback on in the future if you are interested to invite us back. The engagement tour we're engaged in is 22 plus hub communities, but these are the communities identified. And then more broadly, there are digital equity initiatives within this whole effort, but a required element of the plan is an asset inventory. And there are other groups very focused on surveying municipalities and key sort of utility entities and other players around the state to make sure that our asset inventory is accurate to bring back to the federal government to receive funds. Sorry, there's a glare. I'm having a hard time reading that, but basically what we want to know from communities and from community members in the room is, are there convenings that we can join to get digital equity input, covered populations in your communities in the borough that we can be sure we reach out and partner with or offer listening session opportunities to. And then also initiatives that might pre-exist. So one thing I've heard from communities and boroughs already is that a lot of these issues were exacerbated during COVID, right? We needed to make sure students continued to learn. We needed to make sure that people who were maybe not mobile or able to leave their homes were still connected to their communities, their congregations, and their family members. And so if any of those initiatives already exist in the borough, we'd love to communicate with them. And this is some of our contact information. Thank you for your time. We are happy to take any questions.
Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. This pool of taxpayer-funded money that's going to go out to this, will it be doled out by boroughs and cities where the boroughs and cities will have a say on how it's used, or is it just at the discretion of the Rasmussen Foundation?
So I should have clarified at the beginning, the state of Alaska is the overseer of this entire effort. The Rasmussen Foundation is the digital equity administrator. So we are offering funds to support and supplement what the federal government has given to reach out to Alaskans. It's not enough because it's based on population, and we know it's so much more cumbersome and expensive. This will be a plan that all Alaskans have the ability to have input in. So when we get done drafting the plan in the June, July timeframe, July, we will go out to all of Alaska for input on the plan, communities, individuals, government entities. The plan will be submitted final at the end of September of 2023. The funds will come through the state of Alaska. The Rasmussen Foundation is not looking for money. It's not looking for any sort of political interface with how this is done. As an entity that has no dog in the hunt with telecom, it was a good way for the state to have a partner around this engagement.
Thank you. And the only reason I ask, and maybe it's a better question for the manager, but quite often we are the body of which money passes through. And so, anything that comes back to us in the future, I can tell you there's a lot of great folks that this is going to help. Any money that's used to go to incarcerated individuals, I'd really like to see go to the more proportionally to our elderly and our veterans. I'm not interested in passing money through that's going to help people have internet in prison. So I'll put that out there now so we can make adjustments in the future if needed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Assemblyperson Nowers.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. Just one thing on economic development, I saw that on one of your slides, and a big thing for us in the Valley is we don't have much industrial and commercial development. We're a bedroom community, and we rely too heavily, in my mind, on property taxes to pay the bills out here. Part of that is high healthcare costs, part of it is high energy costs, but I have also heard from entities that have said the lack of really high speed internet has forced them to move to other places. So there was a guy whose son moved to Colorado because he was in the film and TV industry, and he just needs that speed. And people who've had to move to other parts of the Valley because the connection's not fast enough. So from, an area where 30% of the community commutes into Anchorage, spending 2 hours a day away from their family because there's not enough high-paying jobs out here. In terms of bringing up all those boats, having some of those high-paying jobs, if we can provide the infrastructure for that could have a real benefit across the Valley for people at all levels of the income scale. And then the other thing on workforce development is we're the fastest growing area in the state. We have a great college out here, Mat-Su College, that's part of the UAA system. We have some great programs in our schools. And I hear all the time, just recently from MTA, they're short engineers
And they're always looking for people. So if there's things that this could help fund in terms of workforce development, helping kids here in Alaska learn those skills that they can then put to work, if that's can fit within the framework that you have, those are just a couple of things that I've heard about to try to foster more business out here.
Through the mayor, Assemblymember Nauer. So one of the initial efforts was to map Alaska. And again, we didn't get enough money or resources to accurately do that for Alaska. So the Rasmussen Foundation supplemented to do additional overlay of what the service was by each community, looked at every single building to try to understand what that looked like, because we know if we don't have an accurate map, they won't fund it because they will assume that it is covered. So that in itself is a critical piece for making sure that there is equitable broadband in our homes, our schools, our clinics, businesses, because it is the barrier, is more amplified in our communities outside of the major hubs.
Any other questions, comments? Well, thank you, ladies, very much, and thank you for making the extra effort to be here with us personally tonight. I think that means a lot to our citizens. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, the next item, I don't believe there was a joint assembly and school board committee on school issues, but just for the record, a week from tonight, we will be have a joint meeting with the school board and the assembly, and it will be at the school board administration headquarters here in Palmer. But that meeting will start at 6. Okay, are there any public relations reports? Don't see any. Mr. Brown, we're ready for any report you might have.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a real quick poll for the assembly for seating. How many plan to attend the Houston High School ribbon cutting on Thursday? Yeah, 2, 3, 4.
I'll be out of town.
Okay. All right, sounds good.
I plan to be there.
I'm sorry, Mr. Bernier?
I plan on being there.
Great, thank you, sir. All right, I'm going to move on. I'm going to invite John Weir from MCG to come forward. He's going to provide you an update on the 95% or provide you the 95% design presentation for Mat-Su Central School. Again, no action required till April 4th. The school board's got this tomorrow night for action. And this sets us up essentially after these approvals are in place to advance the bid docs and prepare for bidding for a construction contract here in the next few months. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Weir.
Thank you, sir. Madam Mayor, members of the Assembly. John Weir with MCG, principal architect. Have been practicing about 30 years, mostly designing schools. We're really excited to be part of Mat-Su Central process. The school, as you know, is dynamic, has a lot of really interesting components to it that makes it welcoming, makes it the kind of school that is an environment that helps students get a love for learning. Our schedule is that we're awarded the design contract in 22 in June, and we're moving towards the design being done. We designed it through spring of 23, and that's going to be wrapping up here with the 95%. And then construction will be the 23rd, 24th years, and then the school will open on 2024. It's exciting. Project goals were an important part of our metrics for balancing the design against the metrics that we came up with. Some of them are listed here. School culture was a big one. Support flexibility, cost management, of course, high quality solutions, and encourage community engagement. The process unfolded in a couple different ways. Goal setting, like I said, to set metrics. And then we met a number of times to develop the schematic design and collaboration. And we had a lot of good conversations. We did a lot of hard work. We did lots of listening, and we had a lot of fun along the way. Here's just a few examples of our workshops that we do to help develop the design. It's really engaging. In order for the school to be successful, we have to listen and we have to provide a solution that really meets their needs. And that was, that was our number one focus. Program is pretty straightforward: learning support spaces, academics for creatives, common kind of community commons areas, family support services, and then just building services. And these came directly out of the support through Matsu Central's leadership and the program model that they use for the deployment every year. This is the site. You can see on the left-hand side is the plot track with a green circle is the site location off Springfield. And then on the right is the actual site plan. Then I'll go through this floor plan here in a minute. Parking, of course, little drop off. It's a non-traditional school, so the traffic on and off the site is not like a normal school. It's varied throughout the day, and so it provides a little bit of, sort of less traffic demand on Springfield. And one of the important things that we focused on was these 14 safety and security policies that the school district has for ensuring safety for the students, for the parents, and for the teachers. And so the floor plan on the top middle is the entry. In the center is commons area. Bottom left is the kind of library art, and then the bottom right is the learning studios that are designed to be flexible, varied in many, so varied spaces, many of them. In yellow, the highlighted yellow is the after hours sort of security, so that the school isn't completely open. And then the green is after hours use of the gym without needing to open up the entire school. And then this is the upstairs. The yellow represents the securing off the rest of the learning spaces, which bottom right is, and top and middle, or top, bottom left and right are the learning studios. This is just an example of the look and feel, different type of materiality, color that we all collectively arrived at during our design efforts. As an example of the rendering of the school, this is the front of the school. 2-story in the back, and the front left is the music room. It's an example of a sort of after hours, what the school might look like. And here's a day shot looking right at the entry. Project costs are a total of $25.5 million, and it is currently slated to be under budget for the construction costs. We are going to be bidding it here in April, and we'll get a measure of our accuracy when we get our bids in. So our next steps are to just review the 95%. We've done that. We're moving now into kind of validation, final validation. We got our cost estimate updated, got that in. It's on budget. We're prepared to bidding for the project, which I mentioned, award the contract, and then the start of school in 2024. I'll leave it there. Are there any questions?
Deputy Mayor?
It's really hard to tell on this plan, but for perspective, can you tell us what size is the gymnasium? Is it like a full basketball court? Is it?
Let's see. It's going to be more like Mockingtons or Iditarod.
An elementary school size?
Yeah.
Okay.
And our firm did like 7 schools for you guys.
Yeah.
So we did Iditarod, and so I know the size of that gym, and that's about the size of that.
All right, thank you. All I got other than that's just a comment. We most of us were here last year in the school board. We worked really hard on this to get it done. So for anybody in the room that doesn't know, we're building this without any debt. It's funded. We're currently leasing a building that's $700,000 a year. So this is a huge win to the taxpayers. And right now we have about 2,600 students in the Mat-Su Borough who attend homeschool programs that are not based out of the Mat-Su Borough. IDEA, Raven, so on, right? They're based out of Fairbanks or Galena or wherever it is. So I'm really excited about this. I think it's an opportunity to give our kids another option, our homeschool students, and also have it be a financial win for the taxpayers. I'm pretty excited about it. So for everybody that put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into that last year, thank you again.
Mayor,
Yes, go ahead, online.
I had one question. What does this school meet any lead points by chance, or is there a percentage of this building that's going to qualify for leads?
Go ahead, sir.
For deed?
Lead.
Oh, lead.
Lead.
Oh, yeah. Yes, sorry. Assemblymember Bernard, this is Mr. Weir. So I always tell people, if you don't want a green building, you're going to get one anyway. So and we utilize those sustainability metrics through the LEED, third-party LEED program. It's integral to our design efforts. And we found that clients were avoiding getting third-party certification because it costs money, and they don't really need to do that because we give them a green building. And so, there's lots of nice daylight. We're using, beating the ASHRAE code for energy usage. Our materiality, we do not have any building products that have carcinogens in them, which is called red list free. So we're being smart about health of the building, wellness, really important for the students and teachers as well. So I'm here to tell you that you're getting a greener building.
Does it have polished concrete?
It has linoleum.
Yeah, polished concrete reflects a lot of light, so you use less lighting in a building and meets LEED's requirements. But
Yeah, that's
all right, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Further question? Yes, Assemblyperson McKee, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. Could you put up that slide that showed all the open air spaces and the big
Yeah.
room and all that kind of thing?
This one?
Yeah. Can you tell me what the ratio is of space that's used particularly for education versus that which is used for, I don't know, commons and whatever peripheral kinds of stuff that schools do and we all do? Do you know what the percentage of space that's dedicated to actual instruction versus
Yes, I do.
as a percentage of the total building?
Yeah, so I consider education spaces library, classroom spaces, which is the commons. We also have breakout spaces at Mat-Su Central where they do small instruction. So, if I had to put my finger on the instruction space, because there's also a music room, there's an art room, there's an activity lab, it's probably 80% of the floor, the square footage is dedicated to education.
80%.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. I did have one other question too. When you're talking about supporting school culture, what did you exactly mean by that?
It's just, I've had an opportunity to do a lot of different types of schools, and most of them are non-traditional type schools. And this culture of this school community is so engaged, and I'm just completely impressed. It's probably one of the most interesting schools that we've worked on. And it's because they're just dedicated to the students, and the students love learning, and they're just, the personalities of the students are just amazing. They're just adults. And so that's what I'm referring to when I say school culture.
Okay, and then the final one, when you're talking about family support services, what does that look like?
One more time.
Family support services?
Um,
What does that look like?
Nate, you want to come up here? Get up here.
Mhm.
You're gonna be better.
Nathan Chudd, assistant principal at Mat-Su Central. Without elaborating too much, the program is built on the relationship of an advisor with a family. And so Pretty much everything that we do at Matsu Central is part of that family support services. So a student and parents may come in and meet with an advisor and support that family. So it looks, multifaceted. But when we say family support services, that's kind of the idea. Does that answer the question you're?
Kind of broad, but maybe so. I know that you have a different approach than, for instance, I teach at a mortar school at Palmer Junior Middle, and I don't know if I were to describe family support services, I don't know what that would look like. So I was thinking, you said it, sounded good.
Yeah, and I would say at a fundamental level, it's, obviously it's a very different model, but it centers around the student and the family as the home educators. And so all that we do is support that fundamental vision as opposed to them coming, primarily to our school for us to provide that service. We're supporting them.
I see, I do. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Further questions or comments from the assembly? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very
sir.
much.
You have some more, and that's you. Okay. Mr. Attorney, comments? No? Madam Clerk, comments?
The clerk's report with the upcoming meeting schedule is in your red folder, along with next Tuesday's joint assembly school board agenda. And just a reminder, the mayor did say it, but that meeting is over at the school district administration building. And that is it, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Let the record show that Assemblyperson McKee arrived at 6:10. Okay, the next item on our agenda is citizens and other correspondence. Are there any comments on the citizens or other correspondence? Okay, hearing none, they are presented. Madam Clerk, we are ready for the IMs.
IM 23048, reporting conclusion of contract number 2212B with Tutka LLC for the Port McKenzie Earthquake Repairs Project. IM 23051, reporting the conclusion of contract for bid number 22139BA with Ficklin Construction and the final contract amount of $323,400 for the Big Lake Elementary Water Line Repair. IM 23054, reporting conclusion of contract number 22222B with Hamilton Construction Alaska Company for a total contract amount of $1,143,369.15 for the Point McKenzie Rail Extension Bridge Repairs Project. IM 23055, reporting conclusion of contract 22126B with Northern Asphalt Construction for a total contract amount of $339,150.77 for the Ems Weiler Drive and Sunday Drive Road Improvement Project. And IM 23061, informing the Assembly of the manager's signature on 5 grant applications for submission to the Alaska State Library for the Alaska Public Library Assistance Grants.
Okay, are there any comments on the IMs? Assemblyperson McKee, go ahead.
And I'm not exactly sure how this process works, but I'm looking at IM 23-054. Is that something that we're going to be discussing, or is it just a done deal, or how do we do that? That's the one on the Point McKenzie Rail Extension Bridge Repairs Project.
Yeah.
Through the mayor to,
Go ahead.
Through the mayor to Assembly Member McKee, these are contracts that are finalized.
Yeah.
Per code. We need to bring this information to the Assembly. It's
And-
all already done.
Okay.
This work is done.
Even the change order, this on the,
This has nothing to do with the change order with the IM. This particular contract that I read on it for 23054 is done.
And the same thing with 23-055. Okay, further questions or comments from the Assembly? Okay, hearing none, then they are as presented. Okay, we do not have any persons to be heard. The next item is public hearing. Madam Clerk.
Ordinance 22131, an ordinance amending MSB 1730 conditional use permit for the earth materials extraction activities to allow for an exemption of 10,000 cubic yards annually without a permit.
Okay, Assemblyperson 2.
I would like to pull, I would like to move, I'd like to move to postpone indefinitely ordinance 22-0131.
Okay, discussion.
I'd like to speak to it.
Sure, go ahead, sir.
So I brought this forward this year because I brought it forward last year, and the folks told me if I, basically if I would have done half, which is 10,000 yards, that they would have support me. Well, you in the room know who supports me and who doesn't. But I believe that we made a lot of amendments to this, and there's a lot of confusion on this ordinance. I would tell you it's not a gravel pit. It's gravel extraction is what it is. I would thank all you guys for your input, because I have gotten some good input that I plan on using for the next one to come up. So I will be pushing this forward on our next meeting. That's all I got. Thank you.
Okay. Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I was, this was brought to my attention here recently as well, and so I'd like to speak to it a little bit as far as what that looks like for the public, just so that they're aware. I think anytime you have an ordinance, regardless of what it is, it's best to have the meat and potatoes of the ordinance in the actual piece of legislation, not have a bunch of amendments. And so this is an opportunity, the staff is reworking this to incorporate many of the amendments into it, so it's not confusing. I've spoke to a lot of people the last few weeks on both sides of this. Some support it, some don't. Everybody's confused. And so in all fairness to the public, that's not the right way to handle this. Put it in the original, or put it in the actual ordinance. It doesn't mean there still can't be an amendment at the table eventually. But respectfully for the community, the best way to do this, and for the staff that has to, have this document living on forever, it needs to go into the legislation. And so I think we're at week 20 or 21 of the public process. I appreciate if you're willing to do that, push this back another 6-8 weeks. It does mean it will go back to the Planning Commission, so everybody is aware. I think that's a good thing. The more public comment, the better, and doesn't matter what we're talking about, right? So that's what that looks like. If your motion passes, then what will happen is it will go back to the Planning Commission, go through the public comment period again, come back before us. My understanding is early to mid-May, with many of the amendments in the actual legislation, so that it's very easy to understand. And if that's your intention, then I fully support you on that, and I appreciate you extending the public process and taking everybody's concerns into consideration. I thank you for that, and I'll support you on the extension. Thank you.
Assemblyperson Nowers, go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate that you're willing to pull it and set it aside to just for the audience table indefinitely means basically kill it. I don't think we needed to drag people to multiple meetings to decide that this was a bad idea to cut the public out of the process. I just want to review that the original 20,000 cubic yards that multiple people turned out for in opposition was introduced in December of 2021. That was sent to us from the Planning Commission 6-0 against. There was maybe one person that testified in favor. At least 20 plus people came, including the industry, that told us this was a bad idea for all the reasons that have been stated by the people here who have come to this meeting, the previous meetings, the one in December. So we introduced, so that went down March 2022. 6 months later, November 22, we introduced this again with still no justification and no recognition of what the public told us about the 20,000 cubic yards. So I'm glad to hear we're going to kill this. If we're going to move something forward to the Planning Commission and drag people through this again, I think we need to recognize a few things. Number one is that the public doesn't get cut out of the process. There's public notification, and the public gets to comment if you're doing anything significant. Number two is this packet of amendments, with the exception of amendments that I have put out there and Ms. McKee, would not take into account drinking water impacts, groundwater impacts, or dust, noise, or traffic. It also has an issue with the current industry in that it would require any pit to not be within a half mile of another pit unless it was grandfathered. So you would have people who wanted to do a pit, who might be in a great area to do it. And suddenly they've got to go through a whole permit process instead of this registration. So I want to see things thought through and cleaned up, but most of all, I want to see the public have a say if it's something that's significantly going to impact them. So I've heard that this is about a guy leveling his lot. These are small operations, so tailor it that way. Make it 2 years, make it 5,000 cubic yards, make it something that makes sense. But at this point, I support killing this, and I hope it is your right to bring things back. But for the publics to know that government listens to them, and I haven't had an issue in my time, my short time on the assembly, but 4 years, that has been 95% opposed, and I've received 121 emails opposed to this and 2 in favor. Nobody in my district has spoken to it. I've got 4 community councils, the RSAs, road service areas, and I've had DEC say we're concerned because this is not going to notify people that they need to stay away from drinking water supplies. So I'll stop there, but I support putting this aside. I just want the recognition of all these people here who thankfully will get to go home maybe a little early. I'm sorry you had to come. A recognition of what they've been telling us, and that is reflected in something we send to the Planning Commission.
Further comments from the assembly on the motion to postpone indefinitely? Is there any objection to the motion? Hearing and seeing none, and the motion passes.
Ordinance 23007, an ordinance repealing MSB 410 Aviation Advisory Board and changing the composition of the Transportation Advisory Board to include a seat for aviation interests. If you're on the phone and would like to speak to this, press *3.
Okay. Who is somebody gonna?
It'll be Alex, but.
Okay, we'll give the staff a minute to come up to the podium.
Alex Strawn. You got paged. He's en route.
Yeah, I think he was on his phone.
Trying to.
Your mic's on, Madam Mayor.
If I can have
Everybody,
the meeting come
is
back
still
to
going
order,
on, so I
please.
need you to go out if you're going to have a
Audience,
conversation.
please refrain.
Sorry.
That's
We're
okay.
talking over each other. I'm sorry.
We're both on the same track going. Okay. So the item on our agenda right now is staff report on ordinance 23-007. Go ahead, sir.
No.
Not working?
Check.
There
Okay.
you go.
I can hear you now.
Okay.
It went dead. It went dead for a while. I thought there was some gravel wrestling going on.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the Assembly. Alex Strawn, Planning Director for the Mat-Su Borough. What this ordinance does is it gets rid of the Aviation Advisory Board and the associated code with that board. This board was established quite a while ago to essentially advise the Assembly on aviation issues. This is one of many boards that the Planning Department staffs. So it does have a component of staff time. It also has a lot of volunteers that show up every couple of months and meet with not a whole lot to talk about. We do not have any airports that are owned by the borough. We do not have land use regulations associated with airports. We don't have any big airports coming in for them to advise on. So the last thing we want to do is waste people's time coming in and volunteering, as well as staff time to really not have anything to work on. So what this ordinance does is it does get rid of that board, and then it it makes a permanent seat on the Transportation Advisory Board dedicated to aviation interests so that the aviation community still has some input into legislation or things that might impact airports or other transportation issues.
Okay. Questions to staff? Okay, sir. I guess not. Thank you. So I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing for ordinance 23-007. And we do have a sign-up sheet for, is it David Palmer?
Good evening, Madam
Good
Mayor,
evening.
Mr. Manager, members of the Assembly. My name is David Palmer. I'm currently the Chair of the Aviation Board. And after consultation and discussion with the staff and with the Transportation Advisory Board, we determined that the resolution you have in front of you made sense. We did have a particular concern about identifying one of the positions as essentially a liaison position for aviation interests. The state has, I don't remember if it's 7 or 8 airports in the borough, but whenever they do a master plan revision, there's a lot of community activity. We have one of the highest pilot populations percentage-wise in the country. We definitely have one of the highest airports, particularly private airports. I worked with the staff and with the MEA on the Fishhook to Pittman project. It's about 100 miles long, and it had almost 100 airports that it impacted. So as an example, but the advisory board agenda has not been very, I should say, heavy recently being the last 2 or 3 years. So, but at the same time, because the Department of Transportation, State Department of Transportation, issues with the airport and community development around those airports, the tab certainly can't ignore it. And we did want a position that had some interest in or background with aviation. The aviation is a federally regulated industry. And so the pilots themselves are heavily regulated by the federal government. The airports primarily are federal or state for impacts. And we have things like the Alaska Civil Military Advisory Committee, so that we have interaction with the military for their activities. There's a lot of airspace issues. And anyway, I won't take a whole lot of time, but we did want one position so that personnel outside this building, if they had a question or an issue, they at least had a starting point for discussion. And so if you all have any questions for me, I'll be happy to take those.
I don't think so, but thank you, sir, for coming and testifying.
Thank you.
Now I'll open up the comment period for anyone that is here presently that would like to comment on this ordinance. And then do we have somebody online? Okay. So who's ever online, would you go ahead and present your testimony, please?
Okay. Yeah, I'm just left over from. I just left my phone. I was left over from the gravel.
Okay.
I guess I sorry about that.
That's all right. Have a pleasant evening.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Is that the only person we have online? Okay. One last chance. Anyone here that would like to testify? Okay, I will close the public hearing then on ordinance 23-007. Deputy Mayor?
I move to adopt ordinance 23-007.
Discussion? Is there any objection to the legislation?
Madam Mayor, I object.
Yes, go ahead.
I have an objection.
Okay. Alrighty, Madam Clerk, then.
If I can get the members in the room to go ahead and vote.
May I?
Uh-huh.
Can we ask, and I'm not saying he wants to, but in all fairness, if Tim would like to speak to his objection.
Oh, sure. Did you want to speak to your objection, or did you just want people to vote?
No, I could speak to it briefly. I just, every time that we dissolve one of these boards, I am objecting to that. I think that these boards serve a valuable purpose in the public process. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, already, Madam Clerk, I think we're ready to vote then.
I can get the members to go ahead and vote. Assemblymember Hale.
No.
Assemblymember Bernier.
Yes.
Madam Mayor, it passed with Assemblymember Hale opposed.
Okay, thank you.
Ordinance 23015, an ordinance accepting and appropriating additional funds of $382,762 from the Alaska State Department of Military and Veterans Affairs for emergency Federal Highway Administration road repairs caused by the 2018 Cook Inlet earthquake disaster, with accompanying resolution 2320, a resolution approving the amended scope of work and budget for emergency road repairs caused by the 2018 November Cook Inlet earthquake disaster. If you're on the phone and would like to speak to this, press *3.
Staff, go ahead.
Through the mayor to the assembly, before you is an accepted appropriation of $382,762. This is for earthquake damage to 4 sites: Vine Road, Point McKenzie Road, Settlers Bay Drive, and the Trunk Road Railroad Overpass Bridge. And this is reimbursing us for damage.
Okay. Questions to staff? Okay, thank you. I will go ahead and open the public hearing. We do have one person that has signed up. LCL Butch Hosley.
I think it's Elise Buckholes. Elise is the first name.
Elise. Okay. So anyone in the audience that would like to address the assembly on this ordinance and this resolution? Yes, I'll go ahead and read it. Ordinance 23-015 and resolution 23-020. Both of them have to do with the emergency road repairs caused by the 2018 November Cook Inlet earthquake. I'll give you a minute to go ahead and find that. No, okay. Do we have anybody online, Caleb? No, okay. One last time. Okay, I will close the public hearing. Deputy Mayor?
I move to adopt ordinance 23015 and resolution 23020.
Okay, is there discussion? Is there any objection to the legislation? Okay, hearing no objection, the legislation passes. Madam Clerk?
Ordinance 2316, an ordinance amending MSB 5.25059 to annex parcel numbers 22N05W11D002 and 219N02W088003 into the Willow Fire Service Area number 25 with accompanying resolution 23023, a resolution finding the annexation of the 2 properties into the Willow Fire Service Area number 35 serves the public interest. And Madam Mayor, I'm the one giving the staff report.
Okay.
So we had 2 members from the Willow, 2 public members from the Willow area come forward wanting to annex their property into the Willow Fire Service Area. 100% of the property owners signed the petition. The Willow Fire Service Area Board of Supervisors approved the annexation, and it met all the requirements of borough code. So now it's in front of the assembly.
Okay. We'll go ahead and open the public hearing for ordinance 23-016 and resolution 23-023 regarding the properties to be annexed into the Willow Fire Service Area. Is anyone here would like to testify? And Yes, sir.
Mayor, is there any need for me to testify? I'm one of the owners.
Okay. You're welcome to if you want to.
Is it necessary? I guess that's my question.
You can just come forward and say, please adopt if you'd like. If that, leave it that
I'd love to
simple.
do that.
But
Okay.
you do need to state your name.
Brett Walker, would you please adopt this ordinance? Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Do we have anyone online? We do not. So I will go ahead and close the public hearing. And Deputy Mayor?
I move to adopt ordinance 23016 and accompanying resolution 23023, and I'd like to speak to it.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Great job, Ron. I think this is awesome. If this is something that any of our assembly members in remote areas can do, this is great. We're going to be a safer community now because of it, right? So yeah, I think this is awesome. So you got my full support, Ron. Thanks.
Okay. Any other, yes, Assembly Person 2, go ahead.
Will these properties be on borough maintained roads?
If I could, yes, they are. They are on borough maintained roads. I just put it on record.
Mhm. Any other discussion? Is there any objection to this legislation? Hearing none, then the legislation passes.
Thank you for coming in.
Yeah.
Ordinance 23017, an ordinance amending MSB 3.08270, open market procedure. If you're on the phone and would like to speak to this, press *3.
Staff report, sir, please. Thank you.
All right, Madam Mayor, Assembly members, Manager Brown, Russ Kraft, Purchasing Director. We brought this ordinance forward to update a section of code that deals with what's called the open market condition or open market procedures. And the open market procedures simply state that we are able to procure small dollar items using a less formal method of solicitation. Under standard solicitations, we have to go through, do a public advertisement. We have to wait 14 days from the time that we open a bid or initiate a bid until we open it, and these are minimum timeframes. We have to go through a 2-day protest period, and then we can move forward with an award. The open market procedures give us some leeway to do small purchases. Currently at $25,000, we're asking to raise it up to $50,000. Now, one of the reasons that we wanted to do this is I had sat on the road task force, and one of the things that I heard repeatedly on the road task force was they wanted the borough to be more responsive. They wanted us to be able to get out there, take care of issues quicker, get them done. Changing from 25 to 50 allows us to capture some of those medium to small size construction projects and get them out there with increased competition. As we started to dig through, a lot of this information is already in the IM, but we noticed that, you know, the last time that this ordinance was, or this particular portion of code was looked at was back in 2008. Since 2008 until today, we've lost about $10,000 worth of buying power. When you consider we had 25,000 available then, in today's dollars, it equates to about $35,000. So the buying power has eroded. And in addition to that, our competition is being limited particularly on like road service jobs, because of the small size of these projects really makes it difficult for another contractor to come in from outside, or even the new contractors to kind of get in there because there's so much additional costs associated with moving equipment in. So raising that up is kind of remove some of that artificial geographic barrier that exists. The other area that really impacts us is the supply in the commodity market. Years ago, we used to hear about just-in-time delivery. We would order something, it would show up when we needed it because it was sitting on a warehouse shelf somewhere that a supplier could get to us. COVID has blown that whole method up. And now what we're looking at is when we order it, it's what we may be able to get in some time to you. There's no more long lead time guarantees where we can get a price quote that's good for 30 days. When we go out and we solicit a price on an object, a lot of times what we're hearing is we can hold that price for 7 to 10 days and then hope that it's still there. So by us being able to turn these bids around, these quotes around really quick, we can grab that stuff and we can get what we need, get it in time, and get it here for us to take care of the taxpayers. The $50,000 limit, when we look at that, that actually falls in line with some other items that we have within the code. Code talks about bonding and everything else. $50,000 is our threshold for performance bonds. For projects that are under 50,000, it's easy. Projects that are over 50,000 require the bonds. So for construction, that really aligns very nice with our numbers. I guess the last thing that I would like to address, because there's been concerns brought up about will raising the open market limits just simply allow potentially unchecked spending of dollars. We take our job very seriously. We measure the effectiveness of my division through what's called cost avoidance. In 2022, our cost avoidance number was $7.7 million. That's the amount of money that we saved by going out and doing quotes and bids when we measure, what the highest cost quoted and what we actually were able to get these items for. So even items down as low as $5,000, we're going out there and we're price checking this stuff and making sure that the numbers that we get are real, and the numbers that we get represent the best value that we can make for the taxpayers. So with that, I guess I'm available for questions.
Questions of staff? Assemblyperson Nowers.
Madam Mayor.
Okay, I recognize Assemblyperson Nowers. Can she go first, and then I'll recognize you, please?
Of course.
Thank you.
This makes sense with inflation. I just wonder if we could maybe in 6 months at the end of the construction season get a report just showing us what contracts were done under this and the amounts.
Certainly, the code provides for that. I can easily produce those numbers.
Just generate one for us. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead online.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just question, what is the actual effect of this subsection E here? If you, in your own words.
Need to grab, I believe subsection E, I believe, let's see if
It's contracts for rental of equipment, including operators and procurement, and required materials for the use in the road service areas for normal maintenance and upgrading may be procured under open market method, even though the summer and winter maintenance program may exceed the limit values of subsection A.
All right, to the assembly member through the mayor. Our code has a lot of old sections in it. I've talked to the attorney quite a bit about that, and there's areas that we really need to go through and clean up. This section of code has been in there effectively since the borough was incorporated. At that time, the cost of maintaining our borough roads were a lot less, and it was done in a different manner. We now maintain our roads through a per mile basis as opposed to a equipment rental basis. And the per mile basis is done under more of a formal bidding procedure. Honestly, I've been here for 20 years. We haven't utilized section E of this code. We don't do road maintenance on a per hour basis. It would be cost prohibitive for us to do it at the size of a borough we are now.
Okay, further questions?
So are you saying that subsection E is not necessary to be in the ordinance? Or so what I guess what I'm reading here is if they're, if it's outside the per mile maintenance, if it's some sort of maintenance that needs to be done that's outside of the per mile maintenance, it could go out for open market with even if it was over the $50,000. Is that correct?
As written, yes, it is. It would allow for that, but we don't perform maintenance in that manner.
Right. So this section is not really necessary to be in the ordinance. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Correct. In the legislation that's before you, that section of the ordinance, section E, is simply, it appears in here because it's currently in code.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Assembly members? Oh, Assemblyperson McKee?
Yeah, just out of curiosity, after what Tim was talking about, how come we don't just throw it out?
We could.
We should.
We've looked at a lot of the different stuff over the years, and rather than bringing forth a large change to code, we've been just effectively looking at those areas that really need addressing. But no, I mean, if there was a motion to do away with paragraph E, it wouldn't impact the way we do business at all.
So can I make that motion tonight?
Okay. After we have the public hearing, I'll acknowledge you, and your motion will be in order at that time. Thank you. Okay, further questions of staff? Okay, thank you, sir. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing on ordinance 23-017. Anyone would like to testify on this ordinance? Yes, come forth, sir.
Steve Edwards, EDWARDS. I hadn't planned on saying anything, so I'll make it really brief, but I do support this as a member of the road board. Many times we do these small projects on short notice, and I feel like the process is much faster to get the repairs needed for these little repairs that come up in the spring, for instance. It's much faster under this way to do these open market procurements. And so the 25,000 was a little bit out of date. It seemed like sometimes we were right up against that limit. And so I do support this from a road board perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience? Yes, anybody come forth?
Yes, my name is Patty Fisher. I also want to speak about the Road Service Task Force report. I was pleased to see it was pulled off the consent agenda because I would like to see it as an item where there can be public comment. I attended probably half of the meetings of the Road Service Task Force. I think I was the only outsider beyond borough staff and the committee, and I was pleased with what they did, and I think it would be great if we could have it not on the consent agenda.
Okay, can I have you testify under audience participation? This at this time is just on ordinance 23-017.
I am so sorry. I thought we were already on. Oh, well, yeah, sure.
Okay, we'll see you in a few minutes, Patty. Okay. Yes, go ahead, sir.
I'm also a road board member, be Andrew Traxler, and I wanted to come up and say that the change from the 25,000 and 50,000 seems reasonable, but there's another side of that when you're on the road board. With my communications recently with the new director, Don Thomas, he says this won't happen, but it has. I've seen it in the past in my short time on the road board. You may have like a maintenance superintendent determine, okay, we're going to do this job. And so right now they're limited at doing $25,000. And if you increase it to 50,000, those repairs can be done without the approval of the road board. And when you're on a road board, you have a large stack of problems. And this one problem comes up to the superintendent, and we're more in tune with our community, and we see the large stack of problems. And we're like, yes, this is a problem that you want to fix, road maintenance superintendent, but we have bigger problems that we have to fix before we can fix this problem, because these other issues we deem more important. So I don't know how to address that, but just for you to be aware of it, that it's a larger amount of money that the road maintenance superintendent can spend without the board's approval, from my understanding. So, thank you.
Anyone else would like to address the Assembly on ordinance 23-017? Yes.
Dick Clifford, Mayor. Real quick, I just want to say we saw a lot of advocacy for public comment and oversight today. Unfortunately, a lot of those people left. However, I'd like to say that if we are going to consider that as a thing of value, it should probably be more important that we have oversight over borough activities as opposed to private individuals developing land that they have property rights to and own. Thank you.
Anyone else like to testify on ordinance 23-017? Do we have anyone online, Caleb? No. Okay. So I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Deputy Mayor?
I move to adopt ordinance 23-017, and I'd like to speak to it if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
So this came about from a conversation that Manager Brown and I were having, and figuring out ways that we could make it easier on our staff and easier on our contractors to get work done. We have such a short window of time here to do road construction, road improvements. We deal with long winters here, waiting on the frost to come out of the ground, road restrictions, the fiscal year end that can sometimes slow things down. So this was a way to streamline it, make it a little easier on the staff. I am going to offer a friendly amendment. I think we're headed in the right direction. But if it's okay, I'll read an amendment into the record, and then I'll speak to that if it's all right.
Go
So
ahead.
we'll add subsection F: for informal procurements with an estimated value exceeding $15,000, the purchasing officer shall provide notice via the borough's electronic procurement system to all persons who indicate interest in supplying goods or service to the borough whenever practicable. The failure of any person to receive notice under this subsection shall not affect the validity of any award or contract. So the reason for this is right now we have a process where if something is X amount of dollars, I think it's between $15,000 and $25,000 that the staff will call. They need to call at least 3 contractors to get a price. And our staff is amazing. I trust that process. But it doesn't mean that we couldn't get more people to bid on it, right? And the goal here is to create competition. And so if we are forced to put everything above $15,000 out on our electronic bidding system, then it will offer that opportunity to hopefully much more than 3 people. And so I think this will help bring costs down and create competition. And it will also mean that it has to be done rather than suggested should be done, if that makes sense. So, so hopefully everyone will support me in that amendment.
Okay. Discussion on the deputy mayor's amendment.
I just
Yes,
wouldn't
and
mind
so-
staff input on that, or manager input.
Sure. You want to go ahead, sir?
Through the mayor to Ms. Nowers on the amendment.
Yeah, just on whether that's a practical thing to do from an administrative standpoint.
It is, and actually the benefit of the system we have, and we made sure it was vendor agnostic on this write-up, is it puts it out there, and then anyone that has an interest can choose to subscribe or get updates whenever a informal quote is requested. So I think it's very practical. I don't see the borough stepping back from an online or an electronic procurement system. I think this came to bear when COVID happened, and I don't see us rolling that back. So I think it is practical to do, and actually may make it easier on staff than it is to pick up and start calling folks manually.
May I add a little more?
Deputy
So
Mayor?
the neat thing about the electronic system we use right now is the vendors or the contractors can actually ask for push notifications. So as soon as Russ and his team put this out there, it sends them a notification instantly. And here's where the job is. They can run over there and look at it. Maybe it's a drainage issue, a ditching, a culvert, who knows, right? And they can run over and look at it. They get notification immediately and get us some numbers back, and we hopefully get a whole bunch of bids this way. This will guarantee that everybody sees it, not just a select few, and create some more competition. And in the long run, I think the taxpayers benefit from that. So,
Okay. Assembly personnel.
Mayor?
We're still having discussion on it, I think. Is it?
I would just briefly say that that sounds good. I wish we had something like this for the general public for topics they're interested in, like gravel or things like that. So we let them know.
Okay. I think we had somebody
Mayor?
online, right? Go ahead.
Yes, I'm in full support of that. But anytime we can create competition, that's going to help us with pricing. So I'm in full favor. Thank you.
Further discussion on the amendment? Is there any objection to the amendment? Seeing and hearing none, the amendment is passed. Are there any other amendments? Assemblyperson McKee, did you want to make your amendment?
Sure,
No.
while we're here, why not just throw it out now? And that would be to amend to this to delete section E.
Okay. You want to speak to it?
Nope, the gentleman already did. I just thought it was a good idea too.
Okay. Madam Clerk, does she need to have a part of her amendment then they would be renumbered accordingly, or you automatically take care of that?
That wouldn't happen directly. Code will note that this section was deleted by this ordinance.
Okay, so then they'll do it automatically. Okay, good. All right. Further discussion on the amendment to delete section E?
Madam Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to do the same thing, so I support that.
I thought you might.
Okay. Is there any objection to passing amendment to delete section E? Okay, hearing none, then it is passed. Is there any further amendments before we proceed to vote on the ordinance as amended? Is there any objection to passing the ordinance as amended? Hearing none, then the legislation as amended passes. The next item is audience participation. Come on back, lady. No problem.
Now I have to ask a really dumb question. I was trying to track the ones that were pulled, and was 23-036 pulled? Good, okay, then I guess I'm in the right place now. My name is Patty Fisher, and I want to speak with regard to the recommendations of the Road Service Area Task Force. As I said previously, I attended maybe half of the meetings of the task force, and I was pleased with the work that they did. I just hope that the public now will have a chance to speak to the recommendations so they can actually see what they are and hear what they are. That's point one. The second point, I have heard recently that our 4 road supervisors have all given their notice or quit, which is very distressful. They are a vital part of the operation of roads and road maintenance. And so I hope that the borough is doing something to determine why we have a problem there and to getting some new people. So thank you.
Okay, I do have a sign-up sheet, so we'll go through the sign-up sheet. Andrew Martin?
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Andrew Martin.
Andrew, can I get you to pull your mic up?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your service to our community and your time tonight. I would like to bring up the rise in drug use in the valley. So, and kind of help should give away to help kind of slow it down a little bit. So in 1975, Alaska was the second state to allow people to possess and grow marijuana. And between 2012 and 2021, 1,382 people have died from an overdose of marijuana. And more than 55% of car crashes are related to marijuana in Alaska. Most commonly used as antidepressants, recreational drugs, usually marijuana, are used as a way to get a more happy or stress relieving feeling. But once it wears off, people do more and get more addicted to it. Drugs are used as a way to dump stress. However, they cause more stress, impaired thinking, and you to inhale dangerous toxins. And according to the CDC, more than 932,000 people have died since 1999 from an overdose. And in 2020, 91,799 drug overdose deaths occurred in the United States. Not only that, but minors in schools have their hands on this stuff all the time, and it's a big problem. Drugs are not something to play around with, because just marijuana alone has claimed 1,382 lives in just 9 years due to overdoses. Drugs have been abused for years and have claimed more lives than they should be able to, but encouraging them makes the problem worse. In fact, more than 64,000 lives are lost annually every year due to marijuana. And in the valley, there are over 40 marijuana dispensaries at a 50-mile radius. And that is not something that should be able to be done. So I think that there should be a limit to the amount that can be in a certain area. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, John Miller.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Assembly. I'm not here to talk about election integrity today, although I hope you guys are still considering putting serial numbers on the ballots. Today, I'd like to talk about our grand juries. I don't know if you're aware of the situation that's going on. There's a lot of public interest now, and it's growing. Last Wednesday, there was a group of people protesting and waving this sign in front of our courtroom. The handout I just gave you explains pretty much what this whole deal is about. But in a nutshell, our grand juries are citizen juries that have the oversight, basically, of our public officials and the courts. And what has happened recently is in Kenai, there was a grand jury that was taken up an investigation on a public official with the courts, and the Supreme Court stepped in and made a rule saying that the grand jury will not hear any kind of case unless we approve it. Well, that goes totally against the constitutional foundation that the grand juries were there to put in place for. Grand juries are to be able to hear evidence of just about anything, but particularly against elected officials and appointed government officials. And to eliminate that oversight is kind of like letting the foxes rule the hen house, so to speak, without any kind of oversight. So this is going to be an issue that's going to be getting more public awareness. And I just wanted you folks to be kind of on the cutting edge of what's happening. I think there's been about a half a dozen different boroughs and state and city governments that have passed this ordinance. That particular one that I gave you, resolution, was passed in Kenai, I think their last borough meeting, Kenai borough meeting. So I just encourage you to study up and find out, get all the facts together and what's going on there, because it's a very, very, very important issue that the people will be able to approach the grand juries that have the power to investigate and to indict and so forth. So thank you very much for your time.
Right, thank you. Did John state his name? Okay, good, all right. That Elise
I think
again?
it's Elise.
Elise? I think maybe she's left. Jerry McCann. Carter's still here? No. Okay, Jackie.
Last time I spoke to you, last meeting late in the evening, about the library books that were pornographic in the Palmer Library and in other area libraries. I want you to know that Thursday of that week, I went down to the Palmer Police Department and I wanted to file that the librarians were pushing pornography on the children. And there was a librarian there. So I got to speak with her and I asked her on what universe they would push pornography onto children. And she told me those weren't children, they were YA. I happen to be a writer. I know YA is young adult. And I told her young adult is 14. 14. She said, yeah, 14. I said, 14. On what universe is it okay to have X-rated stuff in the library? Is there an X-rated part in the library? She said, no. I said, then why is it even in there? I want you to know it's in Wasilla, Sutton, Talkeetna, and Willow. There's lots more. I have 15 more to check. Well, I went home and then I looked up Title 11 on the Alaska Code, and guess what? Anybody who pushes obscene material on anybody under 16 is a Class C felony and they will be charged with that. So then I went down and I filed charges saying that they're under the Class C felony for even giving this stuff out to anybody under 16, and they got pulled. Those 2 books are pulled from Palmer. Now I will start on the others. Now I'm a stickler, okay? I spent 22 years as a manager in the Postal Service, and I was at one point I was the manager of delivery and customer service programs for the entire state, and I was such a stickler for rules that Fairbanks said they were definitely making sure I was on the airplane because they wanted to know where I was, okay? Because I had just done an audit. Well, I want you to know that there happens to be something in the rule book about using your position for personal gain. Last time we were here when we talked about the gravel thing, Mr. Two, you have to recuse yourself. You have to recuse yourself because nepotism happens to be a personal gain. And I will quote to you exactly what Mr. Two said last week because I stayed here till 11:14, remember? So I think what I'm trying to do is make it easier for our younger people to work in our community, to build and make money and stay here. I've worked very hard on keeping my family here. They live on the same lake as I do, and I tell you, I feel like the richest man in the world. I have all my grandkids living with me, and I have my kids living with me. But honestly, if they don't make a good living, they have to go somewhere. Passage of anything to do to get young people working in his field is nepotism. Do you know what nepotism says? Favoritism shown or patronage granted to relatives, as in business. Do you know what the MSB Code of Ethics 271 says? A benefit means anything that is to a person's advantage or self-interest or from which a person profits regardless of the financial gain. And do you know what, in addition, 2.71.070 conflict of interest says? Misuse of official position. A municipal official may not, among other things, take or withhold official action in order to effect a matter in which the municipal officer has a substantial interest. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to address the assembly on any subject? Yes, come forward, both of you.
Steve Edwards again, EDW.
Sir, excuse me, just a minute. Sir, just come up and sit close to the front. So, yeah, go ahead. There was just somebody else coming from the back.
Okay.
And I didn't want him to go all the way in the back again.
That you wanted me to sit up front more. Okay, yeah. No, thanks for pulling this item off of the consent agenda, the 23036. That definitely is something that I was advocating for at the big board meeting is, there may be some items in there that we want to implement. There was some good stuff that came out of the task force, but we definitely want to review that. It might apply differently to different RSAs. And so I just want to say that, yes, let's put that out for public hearing and then maybe bring it to the road boards as well, so we can have a look at that and decide whether all of the items apply to each of our road areas. There may be some that do, some that don't. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. So 2 notes on the public testimony. The first one is there has never been a marijuana overdose. So commenter was just making shit up from whole cloth. He was just making it up. It's not true. There's no such thing as a marijuana overdose. The second one is, and I took notes here, so looking real quick. Books about young adult books targeting queer kids is not pornography. So I don't know what commenter was going off about, but that's just simply not true. Also made up. That's all I have to say.
I need your name for the record, sir, please.
My name is Josh Holbrook.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to address? Cindy?
Hello. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I am also speaking on RS 23036. My name is Cindy Bettini.
She saw us make the note.
I noticed after I got here, because I guess I wasn't paying attention to the consent agenda, about the RSA task force. And I also noticed that only Big Lake RSA has commented on it. And the 2 signatures that are on that, I believe maybe were on the task force. And so I also feel like it would be a good idea if this had a public hearing, especially since it came from the ordinance that wanted time and material. And that's why this task force was formed. So I would just like to ask that it not just be passed and sent off to the manager to implement tonight, but that you put it forward for the public and all of the RSAs and community councils to take a look at. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Come.
The name's Dick Lippard, Madam Mayor. I'm here to suggest a repeal of MSB 1730 because I believe it does more harm than good. Overregulation, centralization, and bureaucratic oversight only confuse the public's understanding of rights and responsibilities. This is the gravel ordinance that was discussed earlier. The permit process is here to allow for public comment and claims to protect the neighbors of gravel lots, but in reality, it takes away the property owner's natural rights and restricts avenues of recourse. Let's imagine for a moment no permitting process. Owners would have absolute rights on their property, so as long as they didn't encroach their neighbors. Their neighbors would have the same rights and the ability to address any torts via arbitration. With these rights would come responsibility. If gravel pits, gravel lots, whatever you want to call it, were liable for harm to neighbors by dust, noise, or pollution, they would have to self-regulate. These permits take away the rights of gravel extractors, but they also take away their responsibility. With a permit, the neighbor's recourse and arbitration occurs prior to the gravel pit's existence. The neighbor's right to protect their own property are stripped down and packed in a bureaucratic process that occurs likely before they even know what is happening. Sure, the borough makes efforts to inform people before the permits are issued, but these methods are arbitrary, they have to be, and once public comment has ended, permit holders essentially have a permission slip from the government to violate their neighbors so long as they follow the Leviathan's rules. If members of the assembly believe this permit process is difficult to manage for contractors and businesses seeking to profit from a permit, how much more difficult is it for the private individual to navigate when they have no financial incentive and likely lack the time? If we are going to change ordinance, favor freedom, we should be bold, not timid. We should make principled stands, not palatable compromises, whatever form they may take in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Cindy Hudgens. Thank you for listening to us. I had a speech all prepared for the whole gravel pit thing, and I just had to come up here and say thank you to Assemblymember Tews for pulling that off of the board. And I hope that it stays off. I work for a construction company, and I'm in the process of doing a conditional use permit. It is a pain in the neck. There's a lot of hoops you have to jump through. So I know how much easier it would be if you didn't have to get one of those, but they're there for a reason. And they are there to protect the public. So I thank you very much. And this is just a little thing to address the young man that spoke about how some of the books in the library are not pornography. This is a book, let's talk about it, that is very pornographic. Just because it's cartoon pictures doesn't mean that it's not, and I will show it to him afterwards. But it is not in our library, thankfully, but it is in Anchorage libraries and school libraries in Anchorage as well. So, and there's a lot of books that are in the school libraries that we're addressing right now that have no place in our school libraries. So anyway, thank you for listening to us, and thank you for being here tonight.
Anyone else who would like to address the assembly? Okay.
Andrew Traxler. Something that'll be liked by the assembly. On Monday, I finished negotiations on a 90-acre timber sale by Fairbanks, and that will produce around 180 homes here in the Matsu Valley over the next 5 years, which is a cool thing. And then the logs will come down from Nenana, and then we will be pursuing a borough timber sale process to harvest the beetle kill spruce that will go north. Nice dry firewood. So that's a win-win. So I continually come here and I send emails to speak about this prospective gravel ordinance that has been pulled tonight, but it will be reworked and found where it works into the community. And as I study this process and you look at the map that Yunt had made and you see all the red. And when you look at it, that makes the urban area. And if you look, most of the gravel that was removed from the pits was moved in about a 5-mile radius. And that's where you get cost effective with gravel movement. So I see I mill many homes, in summertimes I mill a home every 5 or 6 days. And so I see people that are looking at building and then they don't when they realize what the gravel costs at the location they're at. So they have to move where they're going to build more towards the gravel extraction sites. And I see where I've talked to people that have tried to go through the permit process to get a gravel pit, and they find the hoops are about impossible. So I think that the idea of bringing a new type gravel ordinance is needed in the Matsu Borough. And unfortunately, you're the folks that have to figure out how you're going to do it. And I just wanted to encourage the assembly to continue to pursue this because it is something that's needed in this industry, what you're trying to accomplish. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for taking the time. Joseph Hawkins, and I thought I'd go last because I stepped out after signing up for the gravel thing to go to the Farm Bureau dinner that's going on. First of all, I want to thank you for what you did. I read over the information on the gravel, and I saw some good input for the amendments and things, and I'm not sure exactly where it stands. But it's been something that's been dear to me for a long time, and I reflected on how is it that we could have a natural resource, a limited natural resource that's non-renewable in our community that leaves our borough and we can't tax it. I would dare to ask any other thing that is a natural resource that we don't tax. So I got reflecting on this as I sat, and I've spoke on this before, and I thought, what in the world is going on? I mean, there's got to be some back scratching. So I looked at the people who are getting paid, who are the lobbyists for this, and how much money is being paid for there. I also did the research on how much gravel has been spent through the public, through the borough's pits. And you'll notice that 3 years in the last 9, not counting 2019, which I did my research last, there are only 3 years where they exceeded sales of Burroughs gravel over 10,000 yards. So at 10,000 yards, that's 2,000 truckloads I can spend down my road in Soapstone because I got plenty of gravel. And I got to admit, it's my ace in the hole. And they're looking at redoing a junkyard down in Connect. I thought, I just lost value in my thing. Just the fact that I now have to, if I sell the property, tell them that I know that there's a potential gravel or junkyard coming in, I now have to disclose that, to be honest with my realtor. So I thought, well, with this new gravel thing, I can go mine off the top. It's a little bit of a slope. I got my $65,000 off of it right there with gravel. Why is it that we can't tax that? Why are the people, and I got reflecting on this, I would dare to have you spend 10 minutes tonight to find a business that would be more effective and efficient for laundering money. What business could launder money better than that? The young man stood up here and said, there's nothing that's ever done anything with marijuana. Well, as a physician, then 3 weeks ago, I had a lady in here who'd had digestive problems, really serious, had lots of different scopes and things, trying to figure out what's wrong with her. She cut the marijuana, the symptoms went away. The fastest growing spectrum in our society for psychological problems, which with the young females on marijuana. So I do think that there's overlap. I appreciate your time and your concern on trying to find the balance between owner rights to develop their property and that of their neighbor. 4 feet, 4 feet, that's darn close to our water. That's really close to our drinking water. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Joe. Anyone else that would like to speak to the assembly? Okay, do we have anybody online? We don't have anybody online. Okay, so I'll go ahead and close audience participation. We are now at the consent agenda.
Resolution 23025, a resolution amending the Land and Resource Management Division Policy and Procedures Manual. Resolution 23026, a resolution authorizing the submittal of a loan application to the Alaska State Department of Environmental Conservation Drinking Water State Revolving Fund Program for $1.5 million for Talkeetna Water Facility Upgrade. Resolution 23027, a resolution recommending projects for the Alaska Department of Transportation, Community Transportation Program, and the Transportation Alternative Program. Resolution 23028, a resolution approving the amended budgets for the Clap-Mac Road Extension Project and the Old Glen Pathway Phase 2 project. Resolution 23031, a resolution amending budgets for the outside lighting upgrade in Dorothy Swanna Jones Building flooring repair and replacement projects. Resolution 23035, a resolution requesting that the Alaska State Department of Natural Resources expedite the permitting process for the construction of a bus accessible road in time for the 2024 Arctic Winter Games. Resolution 23038, a resolution adding to the 2023 state legislative priorities requesting that the state of Alaska review and update the processes and procedures to keep voter registrations accurate. AM 23019, award of proposal number 23035P to Burkhart Croft Architects Alaska and Santec Architecture in the contract amount not to exceed $500,000 per year per firm to support the various construction projects design and development. AM 2320, approval of contract extension for contract number 2208P with HDR Engineering to extend the final completion date to September 30th, 2023 for the urbanized area corridor study. And AM 23021, authorization to purchase network security appliances from Worldwide Technology for the amount of $213,370.72.
Okay, Deputy Mayor.
I move to approve the consent agenda as read into the record by the clerk.
Is there any objection? Okay, hearing none, and the consent agenda as read by the clerk has been approved. Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Resolution 23036, a resolution directing the manager to start implementing the recommendation of the Road Service Area Task Force, and it was pulled by Assemblymember Hale.
Okay. Assemblyperson Hale, are you online?
Yep, I move to adopt Resolution 23-036 And I would move to postpone it to our next regularly scheduled assembly meeting. I only get the chance to check our agenda about once a week, and I didn't see this one until Sunday. It's been pretty busy up here. I haven't had a chance to dig into it. I don't think there's going to be any issues or problems with it. I would just like to do my homework before we take any action.
Okay, so you are pulling it to our April 4th meeting, is that correct, sir?
The next regularly scheduled assembly meeting,
Yes.
whenever that happens. Yeah, the first Tuesday in April, I believe.
Yeah, okay. Already, we have, Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Yeah, if I may. So I just want to read this again. A resolution directing the manager to start implementing. So this has been in the works for a long time. I did not attend any of these meetings. I've read through a bunch of the comments, but I don't know the ins and outs of it. I do trust our manager to use his discretion and his judgment to determine where we should start. I'm sure there's a lot of great things in here, and then I'm sure there's some things that work very well in some areas that won't work in others. But, I guess I'm, indifferent either way. If we kick it back 2 weeks, that's great. If we start today, I don't think anything's going to change tomorrow or the next day. I really, at the end of the day, when you say you're directing the manager to start implementing, that says start getting to know the document, right? And I will tell you, whether we kick this back 2 weeks or not, I don't think Manager Brown and his staff are going to stop looking at those things, right? So I guess I would support moving it back 2 weeks if we need to, but really at the end of the day, I have full faith and confidence in our manager and our staff to start on it now if they'd like. So I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, further questions or comments? Yes, Assembly Person Nowers.
Just, if it doesn't seem like it's going to create a big crunch. It just gives that opportunity if there is the public comment and come in and do it. So I have no objection to moving it to the next meeting.
Okay, yes, Assembly Person 2, go ahead.
Okay, so I attend most of the big board meetings. I'd say that this was brought up to the big board probably no less than 3 times, maybe 4 times. And they never really even discussed it. They really didn't care, I guess. We spent months, the folks spent months going to put this together for us. I think that we should start working with it. I think those people put in a lot of hard time to make this document, and I would like to see the manager start implementing stuff that was in there. I would say that he's already implemented quite a bit of stuff that's already in there. So I would just like to see it move forward.
Okay, further discussion by Assembly members? Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just going to ask if Mike or Tom would like to speak to this and kind of get their opinion on it. So.
Okay.
Don't forget we're on the motion to postpone.
Yeah, Assembly.
In regard to the motion to postpone, would one of them like to speak to if they think it's a good idea or not, or if they're comfortable moving forward with it now? That's all.
Okay, thank you. Assembly Person Hours, did you want to speak before or after this?
I can speak now.
Okay.
I was at
Sorry.
I attended the last big board meeting, and I did hear some concerns, and I know my RSA has, would like the ability, and they hadn't really looked at. I know the one issue was the prioritizing of impassable roads to make them passable year round, and versus bringing them up to subdivision construction manual thing. So I just know my own RSA had just not really processed it, and even though we had accepted the task force report, this just showed up on the consent agenda. So that means it just came out a week ago, which isn't a lot. So again, I just have no objection to, I don't know if there will be any comment. I just don't mind erring on the side of giving people 2 more weeks. And if they have valid points to bring up, to give them that opportunity so they feel like they've been heard.
Okay, go ahead. Come on, sir.
Through the manager to the assembly. My name's Tom Adams. I'm Public Works Director. I'm not really here to lend support or to deny the resolution, but I do want to point out something Assemblymember Yount made mention. I guess it is important with respect to how you said this. The resolution as written currently actually says to implement all changes. So to the degree that I've heard comment tonight for an opportunity to force individual RSAs to consider how this task force report would be applied to them, I would ask you to consider how this resolution is written, and because this dictates that we would have to apply every recommendation to each RSA.
We're still on the motion to postpone.
Okay, we're on the motion to postpone. Any further?
If that's the case, then I think we should postpone for 2 weeks. It's deceiving because it's to start implementing, right? It doesn't say implement it all. And so I'm not saying that that's not how it's written when you open it up or whatever, but this just says to start implementing the recommendations. It doesn't say all the recommendations, right? So I just, like I said earlier, I trust Manager Brown and yourself to use your own judgment on what you should start implementing and what you shouldn't. And I don't honestly think anything changes in the next 2 weeks, but if your concern is that this means you have to do every single thing as it's dotted and the T's are crossed, then yeah, we'll kick it back 2 weeks. But again, like I said, this is not how I took it. So.
Yes, Mike, go ahead.
So, Madam Mayor, so when I looked at this, because when I see a resolution that directs me to do something, I try to figure out, well, what's that going to look like? So I went back through the the Road Task Force report, and what I settled on was Appendix G, because Appendix G is the recommendation roll-up. So, I mean, they have subcommittee reports and everything, but I kind of looked at that and said, you know, what the task force found that was most relevant, they put in Appendix G and they summarized their recommendations. So if this resolution does pass now or in 2 weeks, that's what I'm going to gravitate to. Mr. Adams is correct. It does say all. So when I looked through that and said, is there anything that's potentially problematic from my perspective, not including what the big board had to say or any individual road service area advisory board. Under the recommendations for road improvement investments, as Ms. Nowers mentioned, it does talk about impassable sections of roads. We already have a RIP process by which all of them come to the assembly and you approve that. This doesn't allude to that, so I don't plan on changing it. What an individual road board wants to do to bring their RIP list forward and what you all choose to approve, that's the process. It's not a staff decision. Outside of that, when I look through the other, okay, the clerk's telling me to be quiet.
Okay.
I felt like that was relevant, but.
Me too. You guys can overrule me.
Back to the motion to postpone. So, how long has this been out there, this document? How long has it been completed?
It was in December, I think, wasn't it?
Right. So,
December 20th of 2022 is when the Road Task Force provided its report to the assembly.
To what Mr. Tu said earlier, it's been out there for 3 months. And so I'm going to support the motion to postpone, but I would it's been out there for 3 months. If anybody has any questions, I would highly recommend taking it up in 2 weeks, in the next 2 weeks, because I'm voting to pass it in 2 weeks. I think it's been out there for 3 months. So if they haven't looked at it, I'm not real sympathetic. But I'll support Tim. We'll kick it back 2 weeks. But again, I'll just say I highly recommend they take it up in the next 2 weeks.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
And through the mayor to the assembly, I already have a draft of this discussion in tomorrow's weekly post. So if you'd be so kind to read that tomorrow, I'll share with you what I think we are already doing with regards to Appendix G. And then that can inform your discussion for the April 4th meeting.
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion? Any objection to the motion? Okay, already. So there is an objection. So Madam Clerk, go ahead.
If I can get the members in the room to go ahead and vote on the postponement. Assembly Member Bernier.
No.
Assembly Member Hale.
Yes.
Wait a minute.
3, 4, 4, 3 to defeat it, right?
I can't tell all of a sudden. Sorry, Pete. Sorry, everybody.
Yeah, 4, 3 to defeat.
It did fail. It
Defeat.
did
Yeah.
fail with Assembly members Nowers, Yunt, and Hale in support.
Right.
Thank you.
Mhm. So now we go back to the motion, right?
We are on the main motion to adopt the resolution. Yes, you
Yeah.
do. Yes, you do.
Sorry. All right, I'm going to take, because we're doing this now apparently. So I'm going to reference Appendix G just for those that are online. If you want to know where I'm going with this, just follow along. In Appendix G, recommendation roll up. The first item was contract structure, which said stay with a per mile and don't do a time and materials. Staff agreed with that. We put that in a report in September of 2021 and said that's what we think the right approach is. The task force confirmed that. That's item one. Number two, contract criteria knowledge. Public Works has already established training and contract clarification sessions with contractors. That happened in the fall already. They have a meeting scheduled in April to talk about summer maintenance. That's already occurred. Number three, contract oversight. Talked about a manpower study to determine ratios. Mr. Adams and Mr. Thomas reviewed that for input into the FY24 budget and made a recommendation that we not change those staffing ratios at this time. That's complete. Number four, area-wide brush cutting, not my area of expertise, Tom. So if you want to think about that while I finish, and if you have anything to add to that, that's that one I have not taken a dive into. Number five, road condition awareness. Both the startup inventory was changed. We bid that out for the first time in the 4 RSA contracts that were rebid this past summer, this past year, back in 2022. So that startup inventory has already been changed, and we have a process for doing that, and we'll incorporate that into future contracts. We also have a roads condition database that's tied into the Problem Reporter app. That's already in place. That also got implemented with those new road service area contracts. Moving to page 2, the Problem Reporter. I think that speaks for itself. We've rolled that out. We continue to make improvements to that system, and it's functioning relatively well, I think, in my opinion. Number 6, road improvement investments. Prioritize spending RSA funds to repair or improve impassable sections of roads. I think I just spoke to that before briefly, and I think we have a RIP process for that where the assembly makes those approvals in the end. It talks about seeking additional resources for funding. We're always doing that, seeking different grant opportunities, federal, state, whatever that may look like. So we're good there. Item 6C, update the road service area operating manual, already in the works. Public Works has been working on that for some time now, and we expect to have that complete in the near future. And then item D, budget reporting. Ms. Heindel and her staff already went through, revamped the reporting process. They've already presented that at the big board, and finance is participating in the big board meetings twice annually to update and educate the big board on how those reports work and what they're reporting on. So that's page 2 of 2 of Appendix G. So for the most part, I think we're largely there, unless Tom has anything he wants to add about brush cutting. I think we're in agreement that it's already an area-wide contract, correct? And I think it talks about some relatively minor spec changes, unless y'all see it differently.
Through the mayor, to the assembly. My name's Tom Adams, Public Works Director. So to Manager Brown's point, I would suggest that for the most part, we are in alignment with the task force recommendations, and we are implementing many of those. To the area-wide brush cutting, there are some recommendations in here that I don't necessarily agree with that ought to be stipulated to Public Works. Specifically brush clearing is related to clear zone requirements, and there is a design speed component to that we should comply with as an engineering perspective, and should not be dictated just basically on a preferred distance from roadway. So I think there's some characteristics in that. I would also, one of the questions that came up with brush cutting is whether or not it should be an area-wide or a non-area-wide kind of function. And I think the task force actually dove in this a little bit deeper, and I think this assembly actually asked them to, with the dimensional perspectives. And so that's one item I think that does deserve some discussion as to how it's applied. When it comes from the perspective, again, I go back to the resolution, I interpret it to say implement all and every. I mean, if you look at now, therefore, it does say all. So I'm very respective of language that's used in resolutions and or contracts, and they take meaning, whether you interpret them one way or not, they have meaning. And so I want to be very careful about how I lend support to what the wording of the current resolution is. And then to kind of clarify the manager's comments, the RSA operating manual has been redrafted and updated. It's actually was issued to the big board here recently, their last meeting, for comment and feedback. So we're looking to implement those. So while I could sit here and say there are some of these items that I would prefer not to actually be told that we have to implement, because I feel as a staff member supporting the task force, and I, like Mr. Chu, attended just about every meeting. I was there to support them. I wasn't there. This was not my committee. It was not me to guide their recommendations. And so I didn't feel like it was mine to dispute their recommendations. This is their report. It's a reflection of their findings. But it also should not be a suggestion to you that Public Works supports every one of the recommendations, as they should be applied to every RSA.
Okay, further discussion on the resolution. Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, just like I spoke to earlier, I trust that the manager and his team will do a good job of implementing what needs to be. It sounds like this has been going on for a long time. The document's been out there since December, so all the RSAs have had 3+ months to look at this. We're larger than the Matsu Borough is larger than the state of West Virginia. There is no way that those recommendations for core area, for example, are going to work in every RSA. But whatever doesn't, they'll flush out as time goes by. And I this has been out there. It's been a lot of work in progress. I think a lot of positive things are coming out of it. I give Moki a lot of credit for bringing this about. I think a lot of positive will come out of it, like I said. And if we need to make some minor adjustments, believe me, it will come back to us, and that will happen. And I hope that the RSA boards know that they should have a right to have that flexibility. Again, the roads out north are nothing like the ones. This community is huge, bigger than the state of West Virginia. What works in one area won't work in every one, and we'll make adjustments as we go. So I would encourage everybody to support passing this, and then we'll just go from there. Thanks.
Assemblyperson Mowers?
Yeah, what Assemblymember Young just said makes a lot of sense, for the flexibility and everything. But at the same time, we just had a room full of people whose main gripe was not being potentially cut out of the public process. And I know I've got, there's a big difference between saying, oh, here's a task force report, and here we are going to implement all these changes, which the first time that was brought up was, again, a week ago. So unless you're really, on it, and some of these boards don't meet. So I'm disappointed we're not postponing this 2 weeks, because I maybe could just vote for this in 2 weeks. But because I respect that erring on the side of giving people a chance to comment when there's not a looming deadline, and that I've got at least one RSA in my area that has said that, they're mulling it over. And again, they didn't say they're opposed to it. They just just taking a closer look at it now that you're talking about implementing it. So I can't support this going forward. I wish we could just give it 2 more weeks and give people their chance. That's about.
Further discussion on?
Madam Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. So Assemblymember Young says that, we can, that we trust the staff to be able to figure out what works and what doesn't in different RSAs. But this resolution mandates that all the recommendations be carried out in all of the RSAs. And I trust the staff to figure out what does and doesn't work in different areas. And so therefore I cannot support this.
Further discussion? Yes, Assemblyperson McKee, go ahead.
Yeah, I've been kind of thinking along the lines that Mr. Hale just talked about. It's kind of what we do anyway. It's kind of what this sounds to me, that it's kind of, would take it personally. It's like, would you just get on the stick and do these things? As if that sounds like we're not doing them already, that you're not doing them already, and you obviously are. So and if that word all really is in there, that would kill it right there, because you can't do all of them. So that's my 2 bits.
Assemblyperson Chu.
I guess what I'd like to say is before the task force was put together, the borough can say that they definitely weren't putting in nowhere near the effort that they are now. I still think it's a good document to move forward. Would this be a good time to put some photographs up there, Lonnie, that I put there? I would like you to, I know people don't really know, but here, just look at these photographs and I'll try to explain them. Before the task force, I would tell you that we were losing 3 foot of road every winter on both sides. So that's like 6 foot of road because of we don't plow the roads to full winter width. There was a couple times. One time I asked one of our superintendents, I said, what is the definition of full winter width? And he says, white line to white line. Well, I don't expect everyone to understand, but what it really is the pivot point or the hinge point of the road. It's where the road and the ditch comes together. That's what full winter width is. So you can lose up, I can't tell you how far, 5 feet, 8 feet on one side of the road. But since the task force has started, since Tom has came aboard, and since Dawn has came aboard, there has been drastic changes. Let's see. There was the superintendents that we used to have, we no longer have. Things are getting a lot better. So I'm happy about that. So what you're looking at right now on that photograph is Beaver Lake Road 1 year ago. And what you see is a big water puddle. And then you also see a berm in the back of that. I will tell you that that ditch there is no less than 8 feet deep, but yet all the water is on the road, right? So let's flip the page. That's totally out of compliance, totally. That's a truck driving through that mud puddle that's on Beaver Lake Road. And let's flip the page again. That was a year ago, remind you. Okay, so what that is that's that water puddle again, and that is a crack seal patch on the road. I don't know if you can see it, but that water is going into that crack. And that crack's like 6 feet or 6 inches deep. So let's turn, and so what happens? It freezes, then it thaws. It freezes and it thaws, and it takes out our pavement. That's what that looks like today. And this is 1 year ago. Now this only happened because Mike Brown, Dawn, and Tom have totally changed the way that we're doing road maintenance in the Mat-Su Borough. At least on my roads, maybe they're so smart they clean up my roads and I don't see the rest. I don't know that. But I would tell you that this I would tell you is not the same contractor, but yes, it is. Those roads are out to full winter width. And what that means is all that water that you see back there, that black stuff, that we all know what that is, it's melting. But none of it is melting onto the road, and none of it's coming into that crack. And that's only because they paid attention to what it says on the contract, and these people enforced it. So when the task force was brought to being, those pictures that you've seen first. So I would say that I want to pass this. Those folks made a lot of effort to come there for months and months. Is it perfect? No, nothing's ever going to be perfect. And I sat up here for long enough, a few years, to realize it's not. But that picture shows a lot too. We have gone a long way. So I hope you guys support this and just pass it. And like Rob said, I have total faith in Mike and their staff that they're going to use whatever they need to use out of it and not use what they don't need. So just another cog. Thank you. Thank you for the photographs.
Okay, further discussion.
Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
Mayor? I have to agree with Moki. I know in the Meadow Lakes area, our RSA contractor has been doing a tremendous job. I mean, years past, it'd be a day and a half, 2 days before we got plowed out. They are right on it. All our snow is all the way back into the ditch, wide open road. And I think this has a lot to do with it. Thank you.
Assemblyperson McKee.
It feels like I'm missing something here because feels to me like telling these folks, Mike and the folks, to do what they're already doing. So what am I missing, Moki?
I think what you're getting is that we are letting them folks know that the borough staff is saying thank you to the folks that put in all their time and effort for months. And the borough staff, and then also those folks are saying thank you for getting all this work done. This work, I've been involved in road maintenance for 20 years here. This has not happened in 6 years that I lived there. That road has gotten narrow to where it's down to one lane. This is how it's supposed to look. And only because of the task force, and only because of Mike, and only because of Dawn, and only because of Tom, does that road look like that.
And so couldn't we say continue implementing?
This is what they implemented.
Yeah, I know, but
So
I'm saying.
I'd like to put it on record that this happens. And so when Tom's gone, and Mike's gone, and Dawn's gone, somebody else can't just go back to one lane traffic again.
Yeah, and that's really great.
So
and
we put it on the record.
But I'm just saying, how come we have to say start as if we weren't already doing it? Why can't we just say continue implementing?
If you want to change the word to continue,
I would
have
like-
at it.
Yeah.
But I would just,
Because then it gives credit where credit is due and it recognizes everything that we're talking
yeah.
about.
Well, I think I want to give everyone the credit that credit's due.
Great, I'm for that. So can I
Sure.
amend it to how will I say that?
To change the word start to continue?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yep, I'd be all for
In the
that.
title, and
Yep.
then I don't know if there's other places. There's no other place in it's about start. Okay, so it's, oh, okay. Go ahead.
That's right, we want.
So the assembly member is aware, the title, while it's there to satisfy the Open Meetings Act, to let everybody know what they're talking about, Director Adams was correct. It says, now therefore be it resolved, the assembly directs the manager to implement all the changes recommended by the road area task force, period. That's the part that legally matters, because in a couple of years, when people say, what did they do here? They're going to come to my office. And what I'm going to say is, you were directed to implement all the changes recommended by the road area service area task force. So if you want to insert the word continue, it would go into the therefore be it resolved clause, not the title.
The title.
Or you can do both.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to offer a secondary amendment then to change it to where in the therefore be it resolved clause, to change the wording to continue implementing changes as recommended by the Road Service Area Task Force,
Okay.
without the word all in there.
Okay. So Assemblyperson McKee, is that okay with you?
Yep.
Okay. So does she need to withdraw her word start then? And where are we at?
I don't really think she made a motion. You were telling
Okay.
her.
How to do it?
Yep,
if you
yep.
did. Okay, all right, okay,
I think we're good.
okay, all right. So discussion on the amendment. Yes, Deputy Mayor.
I'm confused.
I was.
Can we get Nick or Manager Brown to speak to this, please?
So the amendment that Assemblymember Hale just made does two things. One, it says to continue to implement, and two, it removes the word all.
Back to my original comments earlier, I trust the judgment of our staff. I can support that amendment. I was just confused. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Further discussion on the amendment? Any objection to the amendment? Okay, so now we have Resolution 23-036 is amended. Further discussion on that?
I would just say now that I understand that the intent is for flexibility, that I that am not going to object to moving this forward.
Okay. Any objection to passing RS 23-036 is amended? Okay, seeing no objection, then Resolution 23-036 is amended, has passed. Madam Clerk?
AM 23018, awarded bid number 23049B to Western Construction and Equipment in the amount of $2,735,250 for annual operation and compaction at Central Landfill. This was pulled by Assembly Member 2.
Okay, sir, would you like to move and then talk about it?
I move AM 23-018.
Okay, you want to discuss?
So that is the compact, basically to compact the trash at the landfill. They use an excavator to pick out metal. They also have a couple people there to guide the trucks in on both the C&D and the solid waste, municipal waste. And the contract price is $2,735,250. I had a meeting with Russ, the purchasing agent. I mentioned to him that this was, I felt, way too high for that duty. That duty is approximately 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 pieces of equipment, 2 to 3 operators, and two spotters. And those are the people that would, if a truck comes in there, they tell them to back up over here and put the load in and whatever. I would like just to put that dollar value into a perspective. And that would be 3 operators, you know. So we talk about road maintenance. That same money, it gets you basically 5 RSAs. And that's 60 pieces of equipment. And that's 25 operators. I went to Russ and talked to him about that. We took out, there was 3 compactors required for that job. So we said, hey, take out one of those compactors. A compactor is a piece of equipment that only the landfill will use. And basically, I'll just use Caterpillar. Caterpillar is probably one of the leading brands. And there's 3 machines that they make for that job. It's called an 836H, 826H, and an 816. And what that basically is on a 988 frame, a 980 frame, and a 966 frame. So what does a compactor do? The compactor is that piece of equipment that takes that garbage and smashes it down. And you try to get between like 1,000, 1,500 pounds per cubic yard packed into the landfill. So on a compactor, our borough gets not quite 200 ton of municipal waste a day. So if you chose the middle compactor, which is an 826H, that machine is capable of compacting municipal garbage about 100 ton an hour. And our municipal landfill gets less than 200 ton a day. It's a very small landfill, but yet we're getting a really high price. So I asked Russ if he could go to Western, get rid of one of the compactors and see if we can get a better price than this $2,700,000. And I mean, that's going to be $3 million the next year, right? So he has done that, but he has not yet came back with what that deal is. So I say that we postpone it for one more go, and hopefully he can get that negotiation down to a more reasonable rate.
So that's a motion to postpone AM 23-018 until April 4th or a different date, sir?
Yes, sir. If that's our next meeting, that's the one I would like to have.
Okay. We do have a meeting with the school district, but that wouldn't be appropriate. Yeah. Okay.
Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
I would support postponing this too. Moki's right on it as far as trying to save this borough money. I mean, he really is. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
I've got concerns, but maybe we can lay them to rest. When does the current contract expire? And when would this new contract kick in? Right, we're talking about
July 1, I believe.
Postponing this until April 4th. Does the contractor have to start like April 15th? Because that would worry me.
July 1.
To Assemblymember Yuntz for the mayor. Yes, the current contract expires June 30th. This contract would go in place on July 1.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure if we do kick this back 2 weeks and you guys are headed in a good direction, I'm okay with that. I just didn't want to put everybody in a real tough spot.
Can I address a procurement issue
Yes,
with this?
of course. Yes, sir.
So bids that are submitted in response to an invitation to bids have to be accepted at face value. If I'm going to go back and get a number to reduce this contract amount prior to bringing it forward for award, I can't work with just a single bidder. I have to go to the 3 lowest bidders at that point. So
3 lowest?
I would have to go back 3 lowest responsive bidders. So I would have to go to Western, Central Recycling, and ACP, the current contractor, and work with all 3 of them and allow each of them to propose reductions in the costs that they propose. I can't legally do this with just one bidder. Through the discussions that we had and the discussions that I've had up until now with Western is, after the contract's in place, we would explore ways for the borough to save money. But I can't just do one bidder right now.
Assemblyperson 2?
I don't know, but this last winter, did you not go to single contractors, the lowest bidder on road maintenance?
No, I didn't.
Or you went to
No,
all of them?
I went to the two bidders that gave us responsive bids.
Okay, I was
Yes.
unaware. I
Oh,
thought
yeah, no.
I thought you went to the single bidder and made a deal. and
No,
here we go.
we presented contract reductions to both of those bidders and had them come back with new numbers.
Mike, do you have a comment?
If I could add some context, because I think it's important. When we first put this bid out, I had a conversation with Mr. Tu about the equipment requirements, specifically the age requirement. You're not going to see it in this bid because we asked to have it removed. I just want to caution, because I think there's a little bit of concern here where we put bids out and then we're going to roll them back based on individual assembly members' desires. I think he was correct, for the record, that we should have removed the age requirement. We did that. But at that time, we didn't address the minimum equipment requirement. So we put it out to bid. I think we got to be mindful of the bidding community if we're going to come back and cycle through these bids after the bids have been opened and made public. So I think for me personally, that's a little concerning, because obviously we want to do our part to uphold our end with contractors, because that's going to create a good competitive environment. I would just caution the assembly that we should be careful about that. If the desire of this body is to kick it 2 weeks and have us go back down that road of talking to 3 bidders, we will do that. It is going to get tight because they've got to get the compactor in state and ideally have that spun up and ready to go as of July 1. So for staff, that's their primary concern, is the timing to get the equipment in place for the new contractor in time to execute starting July 1. That's our staff perspective, I think, generally, unless I missed anything, but just wanted to share that kind of for the rest of the story.
Okay. Further.
Madam Mayor.
Yeah. Go ahead. Who's online?
Thank you. Thank you. I just wanted to ask the attorney if we were to go back to all 3 of these responsive low bidders after the bid has been open and after everybody's numbers have been exposed to the public, would that expose the borough to any type? Would one of the contractors have grounds for a lawsuit at that point to say, hey, you showed everybody our numbers and now you're telling us to come back with a new bid?
Honestly, I can't answer that question. I'd have to do some research to look into the degree of the change versus what the original bid spec was. Generally speaking, going back for something minor or insignificant would not do that. Changing a major component might. I'd have to research that and really look at it hard.
Okay, thank you. I do really respect what Mr. Tu is doing here, trying to save us some money. It does sound like the bid is more than we need to be paying, but I'm also concerned that with the manager's point that once these numbers have been made public, once everybody sees how the winning bidder calculated their bid, you go back you tell them to go back to the drawing table, then you do build some animosity with the contracting community. I know if I spent a lot of time drawing up a bid and I was awarded the contract, and then they, after all my calculations were shown to the public, they said, "Oh, go back to the drawing board," I'd be pretty upset.
Assemblyperson Tu.
The bid hasn't been awarded. I don't know why we would ask for 3 compactors when we get 200 ton of trash. I'm telling you, it's a small landfill. Why would we ever ask for 3 compactors is crazy. So what we did is we said, and it's depending on how this contractor wants to look at it, it's very significant what a compactor costs. A used 2018 is sitting in Washington right now for, I think it's $400,000. But then if you want to go a little further, you can get an 826 that's just been reconned for $150,000. So how you want to manipulate those numbers is whatever. But what I'm saying is we didn't need 3. We only really need 1, but to have 2, 1 as a backup would be pretty nice. But so we're giving this contract, we're taking away a piece of equipment that can only be used at the landfill. So it should be a significant savings depending on how he put his bid together.
Okay, Deputy Mayor. Oh, okay. Assemblyperson Hours.
Madam Mayor, this may shock everybody, but I did not run as an expert on landfills. But I realize compaction is probably important for space and for keeping water out. And I just wondered if we could have staff report on if there's been issues with compaction in the past and any other thoughts on just compactors.
Madam Mayor, man.
Yeah,
So as Mr. Smith makes his way up here, so just so we're clear there, because what I don't want is folks walking away thinking borough staff are incompetent and don't even know what to ask for. So I want to give you the logic for 3 compactors. 1 in the MSW, which is your municipal solid waste cell, 1 at the C&D cell, and 1 for backup. That was the methodology. That was the logic. I just want to make sure that that's on the record. Now, after we had Mr. Tu and I had a conversation, actually, I think Mr. Tu and Russ had a conversation, and we talked about, all right, we'll roll with 2, 1 in MSW, 1 in C&D, and we were willing to go back to the contractor and try to work out that value. And if you want to assume it was a $400,000 compactor, it's a 3-year contract. You could probably reasonably assume you would spread that cost out over the 3-year term of the contract, and that might yield some savings. If approved tonight at face value, we were prepared to go have those conversations. That's where we thought this might go tonight. We're headed in a different direction, so I'll stop there and allow Mr. Smith to answer your question.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Through the mayor. So we've some history, I guess. In the past, we've had 2 previous contractors that have serviced the landfill. And in both cases, they've used equipment that initially worked out well and in a very short period of time failed to work. And to give you an example, the most recent cell that we're doing in the MSW, we're running about 830 pounds per cubic yard of compaction, which is half of the standard level. And the reason you get up to 1,500 is so that you make sure you get full use of your landfill. As you all know, it's very expensive to build landfills. As we waste that space, it means we use more years of service. So when we developed the plan, we went through what's called a MOLO. That's the Manager of Landfill operations. It's a standard manual that's run for all landfills throughout the U.S. It's kind of the gray book or whatever you call it. What is it called for the book that we use in Public Works for streets? The Green Book. So it's the same type of thing for the landfill. And what that means is there's a standard equipment that it takes to operate a landfill. Actually, our landfill is considered a medium-sized landfill, and it requires a certain amount of equipment. When we adjusted for what equipment we needed, we based it on two things: what the standard is, and secondly, to answer the question about the compactors, it takes one compactor to run the MSW cell, a working compactor. Once we pulled out the years of service, you all of a sudden, what our experience has been is that you get people with compactors that are inferior and don't do the job. And when they break down, they aren't getting repaired. And then you have the problem of not getting compaction. Our current contractor has two compactors. Both have been down for well over 6 months. With the parts issues that have happened, it took them over 6 months to get the part and then a couple of months to put it in. So we've been without proper compaction for quite some time. So in that light, what we are trying to do is make sure that we do the best for the community and for the borough and for the landfill, and saving money. By reducing a compactor, you could save some money, a little bit, more than likely. But keep in mind that if you do it incorrectly, you're also spending millions of dollars to rebuild a cell earlier than necessary. We've lost about a year's life so far in the cell. So that's to give you an idea. We're still dealing with the cell that was done previously that is so far under compacted that we're trying to figure out how to get more space out of it, because it will settle in time, and we're not able to close that cell, which means we're not capturing the gas, we're not capturing the leachate, we're not keeping the water out which means we're generating more leachate, all because it wasn't done correctly. So our goal has been to set it up and do the best that we can for the borough, which is why we made the decisions we've made. So.
Just one follow-up. Did I understand the manager correctly? We could go ahead and award this, and you could have these discussions with the winning bidder. So we can go that route and still have this conversation and make sure we're protecting ourselves on compaction and maybe saving them. Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Mayor? Question to the staff. So the 6 months that these compactors were down, were they still getting paid the same as if they were still running?
Yes. So when these contracts were built, I don't know how many years ago, about 8 to 10 years ago, with multiple, maybe you know better than I do when it was built originally, but 14 years ago, there was nothing in there for that purpose. So yes, they started getting paid. We tried to eliminate some of that in this new contract as well by adding in a penalty clause. So if they don't do the service or their compactors are down, then they're going to pay a price for that. So that is in this new contract, but it has not been in the past.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. You actually answered one of my questions, and that was going to be if we had a penalty clause going into the new contract, or if the last person was even paying penalties. It sounds like they weren't. We're going to take care of that in this contract. Just for perspective, what are we paying the current contractor per year?
It's about 1.6 million. To give you an idea, they also bid in this one, and they bid just over 4 million. They said they're losing that much money. So.
Yeah. And you say we are going to write into the contract a way to penalize people if they don't keep their equipment running. How about if they don't reach the desired PSI, pounds per square inch? Or is that how we're measuring compaction? I assume it's by like PSI.
Pounds per cubic yard.
Per cubic yard. Okay. So are we writing in a minimum into this contract?
We are. We're keeping them at a standard between 1,300 and 1,500 is what the contract allows for.
You guys have heard me say this before. You guys are doing awesome. I'll leave it at that. I appreciate what the staff's doing. Thank you.
Further questions or comments? Yes, Assemblyperson 2, go ahead.
So if we approve today, I do not believe that they can go back and negotiate, is what I understand. So if we don't approve, then they do have the power to go back and negotiate.
To Assembly Member 2 through the mayor, no, that would be incorrect. So I have the ability, we have the ability as a contract administrator, once this is approved and we put them under contract, to work with them to modify the contract as needed. So think of it as I've used this example with Mr. Adams, a value engineering proposal. We put out construction contracts and we allow contractors to come to us and say, hey, this is what you've designed into this. This is what you've asked us to do, but we can save you money by doing something different. So the preliminary talks that I've already had with Western is, look, after we're in place, we're going to want to sit down and work with you to see what can we do to reduce this overall cost. And they've been very amenable to doing that. I mean, one of the items, you and I talked about reducing it to the 2 compactors instead of the 1. That's an easy one right there. But that doesn't get us near the goal that you're looking for in terms of where that number should be. So it's going to take us working with the contractor to figure out what can we do in order to bring that overall number down even more.
Go ahead, sir.
So
Madam Mayor?
You want
Yeah, go ahead, Assemblyperson 2.
Okay. So the contractor that you have right now is the same contractor that you had 5 years ago.
Correct.
And he bid 5 years ago $1.6 million. I think that's what Jeff told me.
He's at $1.6 million now.
Oh, so 5 years ago he bid $1.3 million, $1.4 million.
I would have to go back and pull the records. Yeah, I mean, we typically see about a 4 to 5% increase on these contracts.
Okay. So would you think that? I don't know, man.
Okay.
So do you think from $1.4 million in 5 years it should go to 2.325?
So
that's how that works.
Mr. 2, through the mayor, we have a public bidding process, and we developed a spec. We put it out there, and I had bidders that gave me the market cost, the market value of what this contract is. So the bidders are telling us it's going to cost us $2.75 million or more to perform the work that's specified in that document. So the only way we're going to get those costs down is by changing that specification. But at the same time, the landfill is telling us if they don't have those specs, we might pay less, but it's going to end up costing us more in lost airspace.
Okay, Deputy Mayor.
In all fairness to the staff and the current 4 bidders, so just so everyone's aware, we're talking about 3 bidders. There was actually 4. The lowest bidder was non-responsive. And I wouldn't say that his number was non-responsive because it really wasn't that much lower than the current 2.7 or whatever. It's just unfortunately he didn't turn in any of the paperwork that goes with his bid. So we did have a public bidding process. In all fairness, it's possible that this number has jumped exponentially compared to the 2.7 compared to 1.6 is a huge difference. But the person that bid the last one also knew that there was no penalty clause in there and they could do whatever the heck they wanted. Now that the staff is writing it in there that we're going to penalize you if you don't reach 1,300 pounds, 13 to 1,500, whatever that is, I'm sure that drove this bid up quite a bit. And I think that's a good thing. These cells cost a lot of money to create, and we want them to last for 100 years. Moki's right. It's not a huge landfill, but we want it to last, right? And so this is a really tough one. I really appreciate what Moki's trying to do here. I also appreciate the public bidding process, and 4 people bid on it. 1 was non-responsive, as I mentioned, but I do think 2 would probably be okay if we're really only taking 200 tons a day in or whatever. I guess I don't know the distance I should ask this because actually, honestly, it's my dad that takes all of my construction debris to the dump. I don't ever go there. How far apart are these 2 different areas? And so say if somebody did only have 2 compactors and didn't have a third one sitting there, how far apart is it for them to get back and forth if they were down to only 1? And then the other question I have is if they were moving a compactor from said area to said area, would that do damage to our roads in there and everything, right?
Yeah, no, those are fair questions. So in theory, you could run a separate compactor in each one. As long as you don't have any breakdowns, you wouldn't have any issues. The purpose of the backup was for that purpose, to make sure that it was, and can you, and the question is, I think the question is, can you negotiate that out at this point? And the answer is perhaps so. It does concern me. I certainly don't want to go backwards and have the same problem we've had in the past. But it is possible to do that. Can they get back and forth? Yes, they can. And there's also, I think the question came up if they would be running how many hours a day. They don't run full time all day long. What they do is they typically compact the material, then they get in a loader and they push the material, then they go back to compacting it again. So it's on and off different equipment throughout the day. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but you could in theory get back and forth. Yes, you could do some damage to the road. You'd have to clear some areas to perhaps make sure you don't cross the road. When you have a compactor, there's a way to go across asphalt that you can put shoes on it, but it's quite expensive to do. There's ways to work around it if you had to, yeah.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, question for staff. So if the contract is awarded, what is the incentive for the contractor at that point to work with the borough in order to reduce the cost? I mean, are you guys working together to look for ways to reduce the cost to us while improving the profit margins or reducing the overhead or, things like that for the contractors, so that even though the contract amount is less, they're still making money, because obviously the point of the contract is to make money. And so how does all of that kind of work together? What is the incentive for the contractor to work with the borough once the contract is awarded?
To the assembly member through the mayor. A lot of the items that we've already looked at to identify cost savings are pretty easy to pull out because they're directly related to the equipment, acquisition of the equipment, having that equipment on site dedicated to this project. So those numbers are pretty easy to pull. This contractor, and probably all of the contractors, are trying to establish a relationship with the borough. When during the early discussions, there was Western Construction, their representatives did put on the table that they understand that the costs are quite a bit higher than what we have paid in the past. I mean, they submitted a bid for them to make money and to provide the services. But they did say they would be willing to sit down and work with us to look at other areas for potential savings and split those savings between the borough and the contractor. I mean, typically I'll go back to the value engineering proposals again. When a contractor comes in and offers to make a modification to a design or a way something's done, they don't give everything up. They are rewarded for bringing those savings forward. So we're not going to get 100% of those savings, but we might get half or 75% of those savings. So anything that they propose, we would have to weigh what are we giving up versus what are we saving, and then make a determination whether or not we want to continue forward with that or not.
Right. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Deputy Mayor.
One more question, please. For perspective, and I already discussed these numbers with you guys, I believe last week, but I honestly forgot two of them. And just so everybody's aware, what were the four bids? I know we kicked out the 2.3 something, as we should have. We should have kicked that out. They did not turn in any of the stuff they should have with their bid, but this one was 2.7 and some change. Can you please let me know, or all of us know, what the other two were?
I can. And I believe it's attached to the legislation, but we can go through it here. So the low bid, which was determined to be non-responsive, was 2.4 million annual cost. Western Construction, who is being recommended for award, is 2.7 million, 2.735 million.
I don't need any of the names. It doesn't change. Just the numbers,
The
please.
next bidder is 3.1 million, and then 4.4 million.
Holy.
In all fairness, I think there was a, I don't want to do it anymore bid, which we've all given those. I have clients that I've built houses for that the second and third houses I give smoking deals to because they're great to work with. And I've had ones that the second and third ones, I don't give them that price because they weren't. So that was probably, we want to retire a number or we're just not interested, right? But really I'm looking at three numbers here. If you kick out that super high number, which again, I'll say was, we don't want to do it number. You have 2.4 by probably a great small business here in town that just doesn't understand paperwork and doesn't have the staff to do it. And when you add all those things in and you add that overhead and that expertise, that bid comes up. But again, they're non-responsive and for good reason. They didn't turn in any of the correct paperwork. Then you have 2.7 and you have 3.1. 2.7, you know, is 10, 12% lower than the 3.1. There's no way pulling out one piece of equipment would ever put the 3.1 into the 2.7 ballpark. I mean, these are compactors, like Moki said, probably $500,000, maybe a little more for a really nice one. You know, these are annual numbers here. So no one's going to kick out $2 million over the course of a 3, 4, 5 year contract to save one piece of equipment that's $400,000 or $500,000. So the public process played out. There was no numbers in the 1 range or the 1.5 or even 2 flat, right? So I'm going to lean towards these bidders knew that there's going to be penalty clauses in the future if they don't, reach the new standard, which we want them to reach. And that was the biggest reason for the increase, that and the price of fuel and labor. So I actually, compared to the 1.6 we're paying right now, it is a lot more, but if you consider how much more fuel and labor is now than when 5 years ago when they bid it, and then also the fact that now we're going to penalize them if they don't get to this threshold, I actually think these are not bad numbers. And if we only had 1 or 2 bidders, that would worry me, but we had 4. And have we ever had 4 people bid on this contract before? I didn't think so. I didn't think so. So, good job of getting a bunch of people to bid it. I like what Moki's doing here. I really do. My concern is, and I've bid a lot of things, and it is totally disrespectful to the contractors if their numbers are showing to other people. And maybe we can't get sued for it. Maybe we did do it with the RSAs. We went back to the couple or whatever in that RSA. I don't know the reason that we did that, but I don't know. I've got some concerns with. Do I think we need 3 compactors? No, I don't. Honestly, me personally, I don't think we do. I think 2, and then if one breaks down, they can make one work until they get it fixed, right? But so I guess I'm going to lean towards passing it and trust the staff who we've all complimented multiple times in the last few months is doing such a great job. Is go back and talk to the contractor. I don't even remember the name of the contractor that got it. I could care less, right? Or that's in the first seat, first position right now. I don't care who they are. Go back, talk to them about getting ready one piece of equipment and some of your other ideas. And then can you please report back to us on any savings that there might be? If this passes, I don't know that it will, but if it does, can you please report back to us on it? So that's all I got. Thank you.
Is there discussion? Yes. Go ahead.
Okay, so is the landfill pretty much 365 days a year, other than several holidays?
Yes, I see head shaking. Yes,
Okay.
I know you can't. You can't see
I am so
head
sorry. I
shaking. So
apologize. Yes,
I
we're-
think maybe a few holidays they're
So that-
closed.
Yes.
That basically breaks down to $7,400 a day to push trash and compact it.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's-
and this, is that correct?
Yeah, that's roughly correct. I don't have the exact numbers, but it's over 7,000 a day.
Well, Yes, it's $7,397 at 365 days, so it bumped up to 74 something. But this is a company that we negotiated to screen our chip, sand and chip for our RSAs, and Didn't they go out and buy it instead of excavating it out of the cells that we were trying to get taken care of? And I don't think they have a good track record until we don't award it and actually sit down and talk to them. It's my only concern. You know, at least we have some bargaining power on our side before we award it, in my opinion. That's all.
Okay. Okay, so Assemblyperson 2, did you have further comments?
Yep, it's just a comment. I just want to make that comparison again, is that this is like doing 500 miles of RSA roads, 60 pieces of equipment, 25 operators, and we're willing to pay that much money to run the landfill.
Tom, you have comments?
Madam Mayor, I too, Assemblymember 2, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but would I like to pay for a price, take a gas that I paid 6 years ago? Absolutely. You know, I think Mr. Young recognized, you know, this has been competitively bid based on the specifications that were wrote. You know, we basically have two options here. We've already suggested to you that if you're choosing to delay this purely on the basis for the purchasing director to go negotiate prior to entering into contract, we're not doing that. If we want to award this contract based on the numbers that were bid and the lowest responsive bidder, and we can award a contract and have an opportunity to have a discussion about the number of pieces of equipment, modifying that, and to take a look at their sense of their means and methods and operations and efficiencies that we can go forward, we can do that. And we can come back to you with a change order that is a deduct that we'd anticipate and report to the Assembly about what that reduction in annual price would look like. To do anything other than that would be to cancel the bid and have to rebid entirely, which has repercussions with respect to timing, has repercussions with respect to bidders that have obligations with their equipment suppliers to hold pieces of equipment that are not going to be honored for another 6 weeks, because what we're talking about is going to put this back on the street for bidding for a minimum of 2 weeks, evaluate those bids, and then bring it back for you again to hope that we have some modification in the price that's substantial. And so we're at risk of not being able to award this prior to the expiration of the current contract. And what I'm understanding from you is you're comparing a cost of a contract that you're hoping to get to be below 2 million. We're not going to get there whether we rebid it or whether we negotiate the contract that we're asking you to approve tonight. Can we get a better price? Absolutely. We think we're going to get some reductions. But to sit here and look at you and look at the rest of these Assembly members and say, we're going to achieve a contract that's going to get below $2 million, we're not going to get there. That's not the cost of doing the operations in current times.
What's the cost of the piece of equipment that we wouldn't be using?
I'm sorry,
What's the cost of the piece of the equipment that we wouldn't be using that Moki's talking about? I mean, how much would that save us?
Depends on if you buy it new or used. They're about $1.2 million new. I would guess as a backup equipment, they're probably buying used, so probably the neighborhood of $300,000 or $400,000.
Mm-hmm. So basically, we would be going to these guys and say, we're going to give you this, and we really hope you'll just negotiate with us and take this extra piece out that we really think we may not need. How are they going to respond? I would say, you know, you gave us a bid, forget it. You don't have any stroke then. You don't have a hammer.
Well, I think once you have that's the problem. Once the contract is signed, then you can work with it. The issue here is that if we don't approve it, as Tom was just alluding to, and we go back out to bid, the fear would be, will whoever gets the low bid be able to get the equipment in time to start on July 1? And if they can't, we perhaps can find an emergency use, which might cost significantly more. I would imagine quite a bit more than what this contract will cost in order to operate. I can't give you a number because I've never asked that question. I know our current contractor is ready to leave. Their equipment is falling apart and they don't have any intention of fixing it. And so whether they could do it or not, I don't know. I do know that their staff is preparing to go and do other things, so I don't know what that would look like. But I do think that would present some serious problems for the landfill and perhaps for the borough. One thing that we have in that regards is we are required to cover material daily, And if we can't do it, then we would have to close down the landfill until we can. So those are some of the potential harm that could come if we don't get it started when we're supposed to.
So if you got to go tell them that you can't do it, then what? Does the sky fall? I mean, what happens if you tell them that?
I'm sorry.
If you go down to the landfill and tell them we can't do it, we can't cover what you said or
We can't cover the trash. Yeah.
Yeah,
would be,
okay, so-
we would be
so-
out of permit and have to close the landfill until we could, or find an emergency contractor that could come in and do it. I mean, there are options. I don't know what that would look like. I don't know what that cost would be. But those are some of the worst case scenarios and some of the options.
Yeah, Mike, go ahead.
I just want to make a comment. I am not in the business of painting the assembly into a corner. We're not going to create a crisis here with this. You have the authority to vote this contract down. If you do that, we will deal with it. And we will do our best to figure it out, and it'll be what it is. What I don't want you to feel like we're doing is telling you have to approve this contract. Our recommendation is that you approve this contract. That's why it's on the agenda. If you choose not to do that, we will rebid it. That's what it looks like. And it kind of along the lines. But what I don't want you to feel like is staff have painted you into a corner, and because of timing and a contractor that might not have staff or might not have equipment, that you have to approve this. If you vote it down, we will deal with it, and then we'll figure out what that's going to look like, and we'll come back to you. It's going to be a few weeks. That's what it'll look like if you vote it down. But you can do that, and maybe there are repercussions, maybe there are some consequences. We'll figure it out, and we'll tell you what it is, if that's what you want to do. Our recommendation is that you approve it as is, and we go and have a negotiation. But Tom is correct, and I agree with him wholeheartedly. If your expectation is we're going to roll back hundreds of thousands of dollars annually off this contract, I think that's an unrealistic expectation, and we would in no way commit to that tonight. Is that fair?
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through the mayor to Assembly Member McKee, you are correct in the fact that we don't have a hammer anymore. But as staff has told us, we do have the carrot to where we can share the cost savings between us and the contractor. To where if we save a certain amount of money, then the contractor gets a portion of that in a reward for working with us to reduce the overall cost. So yeah, we don't have a hammer, but we don't have a stick, but we have a carrot.
Okay, Deputy Mayor? Oh, okay, we didn't have Stephanie, we do now, but we have Mitchie. Yes, Assemblyperson Fano.
I question him, okay, if I may. Besides just the compactor factor that would potentially have a significant saving, was there any other things that were there that also, because we're only discussing about compactor, but I want to know, because if in my personal business, if I need to put 2 trucks or 2 excavators on site, I don't buy a third one just to stand around. I'm just trying to understand the logic. I did not see that contract, and this was a while back, but I want to know, is there other things where it's significant enough where we could, we do need to go back, and if it's 2 weeks or whatever Mr. Brown said, if we does have to restructure and give it to public again, I want to know, was there, besides just that one compactor, is there other additional things that would save? Because obviously what we've asked them to bid, they bid based on that. But I'm saying if we're changing what we want based on not having equipment just standing around, because if they're buying equipment, it should be reliable enough. And even if it's buying used, they should be able to take into account what I know it takes. You can repair things fairly quick with if it has to be done. But if they can move between a site for temporary purpose, and whoever mentioned that they only do it in phases, they use it a couple hours here. And I just want to know if you know any other additional details.
So the other equipment that would probably be necessary to complete the job is basic any construction equipment. Anybody has it, it's on every corner. So as far as the compactor is the only piece that I'm aware of that nobody else has. You can't go over to Caterpillar and rent one or buy one, or they don't have it just sitting around. You'd have to go to maybe Anchorage Solid Waste to get that piece. But the rest of it is just all common stuff. And so what they did in their contract is they also, I appreciate that you took out the years. And that's what sparked the contract that went from 500,000 a year to, $1.5 million or 2 million, is because they put in a year date. And then that year date has never been adhered to, but that's another story. So the 2 compactors are the only 2 pieces that they should probably have 2 of, because if they do break one, it's necessary to have that piece to finish the job. Did I answer it?
Go ahead, Mike.
Madam Mayor, may I ask, I would like to ask one of the gentlemen out there, what is the required equipment in the contract that's before the assembly? Not recommended, required. Do you recall off the top of your head?
I'll try to give you a list. I can tell you this, all the equipment that is required is what is the recommendation of the landfill operations throughout the US. It's the same equipment required everywhere. There's about 6 pieces. It's a loader, dozer, excavator, articulating truck, ore scraper. They also recommend a grader, which we don't have. Oh, you've got them right there. Three compact. Say, wide track dozer, excavator, loader, articulating truck. Those are the ones we recommended. But in addition to that, the manual actually.
One sec. Did we recommend or did we require?
I'm sorry,
as part of
required
the
those.
bid?
I apologize. We required those. There were some other that are typically used in a landfill that we did not require because we didn't feel that our landfill was large enough to need those. So we kept those out, which was a scraper, for example, and a grader, which are typically equipment that's used at a landfill. So we actually did take that into consideration. We also put equipment that's recommended. And in the landfill manual, in a larger landfill, you would require those because they need them to operate on a day-to-day basis to ensure that all of your needs are being met and that you're fulfilling all the obligations that you're committed to in the landfill. So hopefully that helps.
Okay, so Deputy Mayor, or Stephanie, I think it was.
Thank you.
And,
I guess what I've heard is we can pass this and we can negotiate. And to Ms. McKee, the carrot that Mr. Hale mentioned is one carrot for them to split the savings. The other carrot is they want to continue to have a good relationship with the borough. So I see that as being something there. The other thing I just am very conscious of here is what Mr. Yunt spoke to, that we had 4 bids. They put their dollar numbers out there, and to send them back to the drawing board sends a negative message to contractors. And I think we need to be really cautious of that.
Okay, Deputy Mayor.
I respectfully call the question.
Any objection to calling the question? Okay, Madam Clerk.
We are on the motion to postpone to 4-4. So if I can get the members in the room to go ahead and vote. Yes.
Yes to postpone.
Yes, we'll postpone. No, we'll not postpone. Assemblymember Hale.
No.
I'm sorry?
No.
Thank you, sir. Assemblymember Bernier.
Yes.
Okay.
So it failed with Assemblymember Bernier in support. We are now on the main motion, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Any objection to the main motion passing? You have objection? Okay, so then we need to have a vote on that.
If I can get the members in the room to go ahead and vote on the main motion. Assemblymember Bernier.
No.
Assemblymember Hale.
Yes.
It passed with Assembly members 2, McKee and Bernier opposed.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay, so now we're ready for the introductions. Is that where we are, ma'am? Yeah, there's no unfinished business. There's no vetoes. The next item is new business, and the clerk will read the introductions into the record.
Introduction for public hearing on April 4th is ordinance 23012 with accompanying resolution 23014. Ordinance 2318, Ordinance 2320 with accompanying resolution 2329, Ordinance 2321, Ordinance 2322 with accompanying resolution 2330, Ordinance 2325, accompanying resolution 2332, Ordinance 23027 with accompanying resolution 23034, and Ordinance 2330.
Deputy Mayor?
I move to introduce the legislation as read into the record by the clerk and set the public hearings for April 4th, 2023.
Is there discussion regarding the introduction and setting for public hearing on the 4th? Is there any objection to the legislation being set for public hearing on April 4th? Hearing none, then the legislation has been introduced. Deputy Mayor, vacancy report, sir.
I don't know that I have that in front of me. I apologize. Oops.
No, we need some vacancy report.
Oh, my goodness.
I don't
I
think
might not have done it.
Oh, okay.
it's my fault. I didn't notice till now. I'll take the heat.
I think there is only a couple people.
Maybe I just didn't get it off the printer. Bear with me just a second.
We gave you an hour to get ready for it.
I am so apologize. I will read it into the record if you don't mind assembling.
I would rather you do. Yes, ma'am.
Bear with me.
I think there's only 2 or 3
There's
names.
not much on there. I remember
Yeah.
doing it. I keep opening up the wrong
One
agenda,
resignation,
'cause now
I
I'm
think, and a
flustered with
couple
myself.
appointments. Yeah.
Aha. So it's Park Recreation and Trails Advisory Board, resignation of Dan Michael, Plating Board, resignation of Pio Catini, and appointment of Ronald Johnson, and South Colony RSA, Charles Krim. And that's it.
Okay. So Deputy Mayor, if you move that report.
I move to
please.
approve it as read into the record by the clerk.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Okay. There is no other new business. We do not have any referrals. We do not have any reconsiderations. So, Mr. Attorney, comments? Okay. Assemblyperson McKee, comments? Nope. Assemblyperson 2, comments?
I tried. That's all I can say. I tried.
Mr. Manager, comments?
What the heck? It's not that late. I'm just kidding. There will be a few of you that won't be at the Houston ribbon cutting, and I don't want to let this just go because this will get talked about. But when we went through this process back in 2018, 2019, it went into 2020. I look at what Anchorage, our sister municipality, did with their 2 damaged schools and just where we're going to be with this ribbon cutting. Kids showed up to school at Houston High School for the first day today. In the senior class for that, the graduating class for this year from Houston High were the 8th graders in the middle school when the earthquake occurred. That's why we have to open this quarter, is so that those kids get the last quarter of school in the new high school, and that's how they finish their high school experience. That's why we pushed to not wait until July or August. That would have been the easy answer for us. Frankly, it would have just been a whole lot easier. And the district also agreed with that and pushed really hard. But this building is separated into 3 zones. You heard a little bit about that with Mat-Su Central. So there's a community use aspect with regards to the gymnasium, the administration wing, and the academic wing. Being able to close off the academic wing while you can still make use of the commons in the gymnasium for activities and after-school events, meetings, whatever that may look like. The reconstruction obviously included replacing aging mechanical and electrical systems that were well beyond their useful life. When the earthquake occurred, I think the building was about 35 or 36 years old. So we had failing boilers, we had all kinds of issues. We had oftentimes when we would do water testing, we would get high lead levels in some faucets because of the solder in the pipes from the 80s. So All of that's been rectified. So the building is designed for future expansion someday when that may be needed. The reconstruction allowed for the school to change into a preferred career and technical education program, providing pathways in culinary, business, medical, construction trades. That's a fantastic space, by the way, which includes woodworking, carpentry, and a welding shop. Small engines is even incorporated into the building. So when you see that, it is absolutely amazing. The school and the community had input into the design process. I know specifically because I was on the receiving end of some of that. And I had a couple of community members that didn't even have, well, one did have kids in school, one didn't. And they pushed hard for things that Houston wanted. And we really worked hard to try to accommodate that. And some of that's in the school today. This new school adheres to the most current building code. 2018 seismic code is what it adheres to. So we didn't go to what the state mandated. They went to what the best we could do is. And the thing that'll probably resonate with all of you even more so is the school was constructed with a combination of federal, state, and local funding totaling just over $40 million, did not require taking on new debt, and is fully funded. That is remarkably different in an outcome than what our sister municipality experienced with the repair of 2 schools. So Hickle Construction deserves a lot of credit. That was the general contractor. I don't have a list of all the subs that participated. BDS Architects, they all deserve a lot of credit because we did push really hard on the schedule and they had to overcome a lot of supply chain issues. I'm sick of hearing it too. But in some cases, it was a very real thing where we were having a hard time. They won't start the welding program this quarter. It won't, because we don't have the hoods and everything that's needed to fully open it until the new school year. But we can get them in the school safely and allow them to be there. I know Hickle Construction is going to have their superintendent in one of the spaces in the building for the next couple months so that they're right there for school administration and staff whenever they have a question or a need, so that they can be quickly responsive and make sure that they address those issues. So there's a lot of support from the contractor to see it through over the next few months as we close out punch list items. So just a lot of great work all in all. This was a long road. And I really, really appreciate the Houston community's perseverance and their patience because we could have done it faster, but it wouldn't have been nearly as good. So I just wanted to make sure we kind of shared that on the record and that the members that can't make it Thursday hear that because it's a very, very important thing. So that's all, Madam Mayor.
So what time is it Thursday?
10 a.m.
And how long?
because it's all about kids, right?
I know I'm in school, if I get a sub, I'll do that.
It'll be at 10 a.m. It's going to be an all-school assembly in the gymnasium at the new high school.
How long do you think it'll be?
That'll be up to the speakers.
Probably an hour if you don't do the tour, don't you
Yeah,
think?
I think so. And then the students are going to lead tours for the community that shows up and take them through the school and explain some of the different features and functionality. So it should be a great celebration. Just take a day off.
You need your mic on when you're talking.
What?
Need your mic on when you're talking. There's people watching.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm just saying, we have trouble getting subs these days. So actually Teeland one day had to close because they didn't have enough teachers because they were sick and we didn't get subs. So, but I'm going to go in tomorrow and say, I need this and see what we get. Yeah, I'd like to.
If you need a ride out, give me a call.
Got it.
I'll even chauffeur you.
Thanks.
Assemblyperson Panu, do you have closing comments?
I actually really appreciate it too. It's kind of brought up and we had a really good discussion. And, but I ended up going with the fact that we already, not awarded, but on that contract thing, because what we specified, they were provided. But I've seen in the future, if we can save money and potentially before we even give it away, if you look into that way we can get better results ahead of time without, them have to publicly see the competition's number and things like that. But I'm saying maybe we do better work or whoever the department is in charge of that contract, that if we have potential to save, do it at the proper time when we're asking for specific things. And so that we kind of don't have this kind of uncomfortable almost situation. And then we still have to vote. So I just want to say, I appreciate the discussion we had, but maybe doing it at the time before we give it for bidding, make those recommendation changes, work closely to department, whoever's in charge of that, so that we can, like, going from 3 to 2 or whatever it is, we do that ahead time, and then it's fair to contractor, they bid it, and then we don't have this kind of discussion after fact. That's what's my recommendation for future as well.
Assemblyperson Nowers, parting comment.
So glad we have gravel behind us. Maybe we can get a meeting that finishes before 9:30 one of these days. I share some of the same concerns as Assemblymember Fonov. I just think we need to be very careful. I misunderstood when I first heard Mr. Tu. I thought he was saying he had directed the purchasing officer to, do something after the bids had been opened. I'm glad it came to the assembly. I just want to reiterate that I don't think any individual assembly member should be directing purchasing to, do something with a contract once the bids have been opened. And as much as we can work ahead and see ways for savings, I think that's great. And there's a lot of knowledge on this body in terms of contracting and construction. I also think we just need to be really careful about things we say about contractors that work with the borough. So I think enough said on that. I'm very thankful for the mayor for bringing up Benny Cottle. When we moved here in the Valley and my husband started volunteering with the fire service, Benny was there, and I know there's going to be a memorial service coming up, and I'm sure there will be many Benny stories, and there's a lot of Valley history in there too. So that's a big loss, 2 Cottles in a short amount of time. Also, just I know it was a small thing tonight, but a couple months ago, we had a lot of folks testifying to us about concern about elections and about the voting rolls needing to be updated. So I just want to say thanks to my fellow assembly members for passing the resolution tonight. When I to ask the state to clean up those rolls, when I looked into it more after our meetings with the Division of Elections, it really appeared they will not take somebody off the rolls until they get an affirmative response from the address that person last listed. And it just, there's no reason in my mind that you can't, after 4 years of not voting, take that person off. You can't expect the person who moved into that spot to have to respond in order to list them as inactive and then complete the process. So I looked at my own district. There were people on the roll. There was one person all the way back to 1996. And there was several hundred people, well, a couple hundred people that were 10 years or older. And then 800 out of the 13,000 in my district were 2019 or late earlier that had never voted. So I saw an opportunity for that. So much appreciated.
Madam Clerk, do you have a report? No. Okay. Assemblyperson Hale, do you have parting comments, sir?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to say I did quite a bit of survey layout work out there at the Houston High School, and I am really sad that I'm going to be missing the ribbon cutting, but kudos to the borough and to the school district for getting that project done. It's a beautiful thing.
Deputy Mayor, parting comments?
Yeah, for fun, I'd like to open up and say I have no idea why Jerry Glenn is here. I think it's pretty cool that he's partaking in the public process. But for fun, I wanted to let everybody know that the gentleman out here in the crowd actually gets yelled at way more than we do. We signed up for this, but he is the head referee for Alaska USA Wrestling, and he gets yelled at by every one of us every weekend. We are never right. He's always correct, as he should be. And so just wanted to let everybody up here know for a little bit of fun. We're not the only ones here that get yelled at all the time. So, Jerry, good to see you. Hickle in Houston, yeah, man, what a cool, this school is going to be amazing. It's got so many things that community needs. I coached the wrestling team out there from 2004 to 2008, and it is an awesome community. It's pretty exciting that the kids that were in middle school when this happened get to actually finish out. So I'm glad that we're pushing the schedule. I've heard nothing but amazing things about Hickle from some of the subcontractors that work for him. We lost arguably one of our greatest contractors out here, passed away recently. It left a big void. I hope Hickle will continue to bid to the borough because they did an amazing job. The subcontractors said a lot of good things about them, that they did an awesome job. So I'm really excited about that. I want to pat Moki on the back for postponing the gravel thing. I think the more public process, the better. It was hard for me to listen to people say that it was a rushed process. We're in week 21, but thank you. You're going to add another, 6, 8 weeks to it, and whatever it takes to get it right. I really, like I said, I pat you on the back for that. I appreciate that. So, and I think everybody, whether they agree with the legislation or they don't, should at least recognize that you're doing everything you can to get this right. And I do appreciate that. So, I look forward to the staff reporting back on us, to us on any sort of value engineering that they can work out on that contract we spoke about earlier. And then, yeah, thank you for bringing up Benny Cottle. So Benny's my great uncle. And we've spent a lot of time the last few days talking about, he really embodies what the Mat-Su Borough is all about. When him and my other uncles headed here from Pennsylvania, they were teenagers and they didn't know anybody up here, scared to death. And they were so scared that they didn't even bring my great grandma at the time or their sisters. They felt like they needed to get up here and cut down some trees and get some heat in a structure before they brought the girls. And it took a couple of years. The family was divided for a long time. We did have some other family here. We have roots going back to the late 1800s, but not that we're willing to let them live with them per se, right? It was a huge risk that they took, and that's what this community is built on. He's dedicated his entire life to public service with the fire department, and his kids have too. It's pretty cool. But thank you for bringing him up. It really means a lot to my family, and I'll leave it at that.
Assemblyperson Bonner, parting comments?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank everyone, and thank you, Moki. Your heart's there. And I'd just like to ask a prayer. Dear Lord, we are so grateful to be living in a democracy. I want to thank you Lord, for the veterans. May you bless them for their sacrifices. As our leaders work together to find solutions to difficult problems, we ask you to bless us with wisdom, guide us with humility to one another, help us to show Christ-like love to those they interact with, and be an advocate for our constituents and others. Please, Lord, bless our borough and watch over our residents. Please help the less fortunate, the downtrodden, the people that are suffering homelessness, addiction, and anyone who is in need of your love. I would like to pray for the people in Ukraine. May we see another David and Goliath story play out. In Jesus' name, amen.
There's no executive session, and without there being no objection, we will adjourn at 43?
43. 9.
9:43. Thank you.
You just gotten used to being